Inside the Birds is back. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Inside the Birds pregame live here at Rivers Casino and Sportsbook on Delaware Ave, where Philly loves a winner. I'm Jeff Mosher from Inside the Birds. To my right, that is my Inside the Birds co-host, Adam Kaplan. And to my left, we missed you last Thursday night, buddy.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
We're glad you're back. Our tape.
It's actually in the script. He has to say that, just so you know.
No, I'm actually done here. No, we did miss you, Greg. Greg Cosell, welcome back. Looking forward to breaking down the game today with you. Welcome to our audience. We love doing this show at 10 a.m., even for a 4 o'clock game. We want to get you all ready for your 1 o'clock football and talk some Birds before that. And Jason Avant, who's normally on the show, will be with us at some point during the show, so just hang in there. Jason's on his way. We are here at Jack's Bar and Grill inside Rivers Sportsbook and Casino, having a great time. There's already people starting to come in. They've got their Eagles jerseys on. I saw not only a Carson Wentz jersey in the audience out there, but a Javon Curse, an Eagles.
Wow, 93?
93 Eagles Javon Curse jersey.
That long ago, wow.
Yeah, I said it last
flies.
week on the show, Greg, last Thursday night. It's amazing to me, and I respect it how, like the old legends, their jerseys are worn around this city all the time. It's kind of, I don't know if it's like that in Indianapolis or Pittsburgh or Houston or anything like that.
I guess I couldn't speak to that, but you definitely see it in Philly.
Yeah, definitely. Well, the Eagles head west today, way west, out to Las Vegas. It'll be their first ever trip to the brand new Allegiant Stadium. And if you've seen that thing, it kind of
spaceship.
Yeah, it looks like a spaceship, like all the other new stadiums that have been built recently. Very futuristic, kind of right out of the Jetsons. Eagles are 2-4. The Raiders are 4-2, so inverse records there. Last we saw the Eagles was Thursday night. They fell to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, 28-22. The Raiders lost their head coach last week to a resignation. Then they won a big game against Denver. They've been kind of a Jekyll and Hyde team all year long. They started off 3-0, then they lost 2 straight, but they are 4-2 as they welcome the Eagles into their building today. Hey, look, you don't have to be in Vegas today to be a big winner. You can come down here to Rivers, you can place your bet, you can watch the game on these unbelievable flat screen TVs, you can have a few drinks, you can have some great food, you can come watch the show here. We're going to be here for a while. It's a great place. It is football watching heaven right here, and even some other sports and baseball are on the big screen TV, so make sure you come down and check it out. Also, if you could do us a favor and hit that like button, hit that share button, leave a comment. If you're watching on YouTube, in the comment or questions box, tell us what you want to talk about. Ask us any questions you want. We'll try to get to it, but please give us as many great and positive reviews as you possibly can because it helps. Let's start with the latest news, fellas. It's kind of been a good year for the Eagles injury-wise compared to last year, but obviously they kind of got dealt a blow at the end of the week. Safety Anthony Harris is going to be out today. Now, the poor guy was practicing with 2 wraps on his hands already all week, and then it comes out that he has a groin injury, and that's going to be like the trifecta. One hand, groin, he's out, not going to be able to play.
No comment.
No comment?
Les Bowen did for us on Twitter. It was hilarious.
Oh, I didn't see. All right. Anthony Harris will be out. The Eagles are already kind of thin at safety.
Yeah.
Kevon Wallace is in the practice window after being activated from IR, but not ready to play yet. So you're talking about right now, your starting safeties would be Rodney McLeod, probably Marcus Epps.
Yeah, Marcus Epps should be in, is it Krashiri?
It would be Andre Chachere.
Chachere, I could never get it right. Andre Chachere, who's played mainly on special teams.
Right.
Will be the third safety, and that's it. Yeah, well, actually, no. Elijah Riley was added from the practice squad, who was a former corner out of Army, who they really liked. This is the guy they liked so much they protected him on their practice squad so no one else could sign him. So he's now on the 53-man roster, and Wallace is not technically on the roster. He's working his way back on injury reserve. He still remains on injury reserve, but he's in the practice window. As you said, so they're a little bit thin at safety right now.
Sure.
So they cannot afford any more injuries at that position as they head into today's game.
And, of course, Elijah Riley on the practice squad was elevated.
Yeah, that's what I was talking about. Yes,
so, right,
Riley's
you mentioned that as well. All right, but the better news is Dallas Goedert off COVID-19 list, able to practice a little bit. He will play today. And the return of Lane Johnson, who's missed the last 3 games because his absence due to personal reasons related to anxiety and depression that he's come out and talked about. So you'll have Lane Johnson back, you'll have Dallas Goedert back. Kind of important for an offense that's been struggling pretty lately to get things going. The two pillars there, Craig. I mean, I would think that both of those guys are going to be really significant today.
You would think?
You would think.
You would think?
Well, I mean, listen, I've been saying this about Miles Sanders, so don't look at me like I'm crazy, right?
You would think.
You would think. You would think. Adam, before we move on, any other, and the Eagles are 2-4. They've lost 4 of 5, honestly, and they haven't been doing well in many key areas. Are you anticipating any changes to look for today?
Yeah. Linebacker, you saw Eric Wilson, right? He got his role reduced. He only had 52 snaps over the previous 2 games.
Right.
From what we're hearing, there's probably going to be some more of that. Not particularly with Wilson, but maybe some of the other linebackers. Should remember, you have 7 linebackers on the 53-man roster. We didn't think, you and I said this before the season started, we didn't think it would last this long.
Right.
But they still have 7. Now we'll see if all 7 dress, but we'll see how their rotation is. And they do a weird thing, which we get into later. Most teams go by series rotating linebackers. The Eagles will do it within series.
Yeah.
Which is something that's kind of odd. And again, we have a new coaching staff, linebackers coach, a new defensive coordinator. So I think we're going to see some more of this rotation at linebacker.
All right, well, we're going to talk about the defense and that linebacker position as we get later in the show, but obviously something very interesting to look for. Let's talk about some of the other injuries. Really for the Eagles, after Anthony Harris, not too bad. Jack Anderson, a backup guard, is questionable. He has a hamstring. And on defense, I think we already mentioned Anthony Harris. Epps and McLeod will have to play. A couple other guys, Landon Dickerson should be fine. Now, Jason Kelce has been dealing with a foot injury. It just seems like that's going to be something he's going to deal with for most of the year.
Yeah, this is the 4th week that he's listed on the injury report.
Right.
So it's something to keep an eye on. And as we learned a couple years ago, Kelce played with broken toes. He talked about it.
Yeah,
they put an insert in and he was able to play through it. Barnett, this is a new injury for him. It was an ankle before, now it's a foot injury. And Dickerson, I don't know that it's the same knee, but he's shown that he could play with it. And we'll talk to Greg about how you think the tape looks. But the Eagles, you're right, Jeff. They come in. This is the healthiest they've been in weeks. 3 of their offensive line starters, both tackles in the lineup, where they're supposed to be, right?
Right.
Mailata goes back to left tackle, Kelce starting. But the 2 guard spots obviously are changes from week 1.
Yeah, no doubt about it. All right, that's basically it for Eagles injuries. The Raiders, a little bit worse off. I mean, obviously they've got a lot of injuries in their secondary. They're down a couple of cornerbacks, Trayvon Mullen, Damon Arnett. But the real big news is that as we sit here and do this broadcast right now, we're not sure if Darren Waller is going to play. They're all pro tight end.
Yeah, he got hurt in Friday's practice. He had a knee injury, which he's been on the injury report for the last couple of weeks. And then he hurt his ankle in Friday's practice. I don't believe he participated in the Saturday walkthrough. He's a true workout before the game decision. We'll see how the ankle goes. That changes everything.
Yeah.
Greg, what does Waller, when you watch this tape, what does he mean to their offense?
Well, he means a ton because it's not only how good he is individually. We know that we don't need to discuss that he's a good player and a great player, really. But it's what they can do formationally and with personnel packages. Because Waller is very often the single receiver to the short side of the field. He's the boundary X. And they don't have a tight end who can really do that. Now, they will still do it with Foster Moreau. For instance, they threw a touchdown pass last week to Kenyon Drake, where Foster Moreau was the boundary X receiver. But Foster Moreau was obviously not the primary receiver. This was a specific play call designed to get the ball to Drake. And then, one of the things they do an awful lot of is they line up, and they'll still do this, they line up in bunch formations. And Waller can line up in any of the 3 positions in the 3-man bunch. And then they run different route concepts with him. So he's a really versatile piece in terms of how they use him formationally and route concept-wise, and they don't have another player who can do those kinds of things.
Yeah.
So he's a game changer. So it would be Foster Moreau, if he doesn't play, who would start. And then what happened was they had a tight end go on IR this weekend, and they added a undrafted free agent off the roster, Matt Bushman, from BYU. Yeah, who's as they typically go, he's an older player.
He's an older player,
He's 25. So and Derek Carrier, former Eagle, is unfortunately on injury reserve, so they're very light at tight end if Waller cannot play.
And that's interesting because this is a team, again, we can only speak as to what they did under John Gruden. Things could change now. But under John Gruden, they were very much a multiple tight end offense. This was a team that lined up with 2 and 3 tight ends. They're very much a base personnel offense. That could well change today. They certainly, their wide receivers are all up today, so this could certainly change with Waller out. And
some more 11?
And
potentially if
You
he's
could
out.
see
Yeah.
more 11 personnel,
Yeah.
3 wide receivers. They've got good ones. So that's something that would be a change from what they've done up to this point, but it might be necessitated by the injuries.
Well, also, as we will monitor that situation with him, also up today for the Eagles will be Richard Rodgers, who was just signed to the practice squad. Obviously, there was some uncertainty about Dallas Goedert's status throughout the week. But even with Dallas Goedert up and Zach Ertz no longer here, you need some reinforcements at tight end. So you're looking at Goedert, Jack Stoll, and I would imagine you'll see some Richard Rodgers on the field today.
You will.
Sure.
It's been there.
Sure. Absolutely. All right, so again, Richard Rodgers and Elijah Riley, the 2 practice squad elevations for the Eagles, who have kind of not used those elevations as much as you thought that they would this year. So finally needing to do that. The Eagles are getting ready to play their first game in their 88-year franchise history in Las Vegas, and after a grueling 6-game stretch to start the year that included games against last year's Super Bowl champions, the year before Super Bowl champions, and 3 quarterbacks who have been MVPs in the league, it seems like the schedule opens up a little bit here, starting today with the Raiders. Not that the Raiders are a slouch, but you've got the Raiders, then the winless Lions, and then you've got a tough Chargers team, but then Broncos and Saints. It feels like this is the part of the schedule, guys, where if the Eagles are going to kind of right their ship, it's now, but it's got to start today. I mean, you have to, if you really have any belief in this team turning it around, Adam, I would think it's got to start today in Las Vegas.
Yeah, because look, if they lose today, they'd be 2-5. They win today, they're 3-4. You mentioned the Lions game. Though the Lions are competitive, they haven't won yet.
Right.
So this is an important game, and that Waller injury obviously is a game changer if he cannot play. And what I find interesting, and looking at NFL lines, it's always interesting to see how Vegas sees it, or lines makers. For the Eagles to open up this game as only a 2.5-point underdog shocked me.
Right.
And it's still only 2.5 for 3. Which tells me that they only see it as an even game. There's no way it's an even game. With Waller healthy, to me, the Eagles should be a 6-point dog. So they clearly think that emotional game last week at Denver, and I understand that. Talk to the Raiders. There's no question that they put a lot into that Denver game. No question.
Sure. Well, let me ask you, Greg, why, without getting too much into the X's and O's that we're about to, your general opinion of why the Raiders seem to have been a Jekyll and Hyde team so far? Head coach stuff notwithstanding?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's, and I say this honestly, I think it's a little too early to call them Jekyll and Hyde. I mean, they won 3 in a row.
Right.
They lost 2, and they came back and dominated in the game. So I don't know if they're Jekyll and Hyde. I don't know if anybody thought the Raiders going into the season were going to be a 14-3 team. So I think there was a sense that the Raiders had a pretty good offensive team with a veteran quarterback playing at a higher level than he's ever played before, with an offense that kept expanding under the previous head coach, and that defensively there were major questions. That's why they have a new defensive coordinator this year.
Right.
So I don't think they're Jekyll and Hyde. I think they're playing, for the most part, the way a lot of people thought they would play.
Sure.
So I don't see them that way at all.
Maybe it was the fact that they beat Baltimore on the opening in their game, and people might have thought, oh, this is a lot better than I thought.
And week 1, things happen week 1 that can end up being a whole lot different than the way the season plays out.
True. It's not a great.
So I don't think it's a Jekyll and Hyde thing. I think that the defense is a work in progress. They brought in Gus Bradley. We know what he is. We'll discuss more about what he does from an X&O standpoint.
Right.
But as you said, they've had a lot of injuries, particularly at corner. And there's questions at linebacker as to the quality of those players. So I think that defensively, this season was going to be a little bit of a work in progress.
Sure.
No, quite frankly, I'm surprised that they're 4-2. They have a record as good, though. Greg, what happened with Derek Carr in those 2 losses against the Chargers, particularly against the Bears? Anything you noticed with him? He just didn't play well? Anything in those games?
I'm trying to remember specifically about those games.
The Bears won. They only scored 9 points and only scored 14 against the Chargers. That Monday night game.
And I think again they've only played 1 game under the new coordinator, correct?
I believe.
Yes, Greg Olsen.
Yes.
Yes.
When Gruden was there, one thing Gruden has always believed, despite the fact that he has the West Coast offense pedigree, which most people think about as a passing pedigree, is Gruden has always wanted to be a physical run coach. He wants to line up, he wants to hit you in the mouth, and he wants to run the ball. And they've not been able to run the ball with meaningful consistency this year. And I think that hurts them. Because that's the way they played previously. That could, again, we have 1 game now. Greg Olsen is now calling the plays. I think it's going to be different, quite honestly.
Well, there's no better antidote for a bad running game than going up against the Eagles, and we'll talk about that
That's true.
As this game goes on. Look, the 28-22 loss on Thursday night to the Bucs may have looked close in final score, but the reality is it was not a very close game in the stat sheet. The Bucs had almost 400 yards. The Eagles had about 200 yards. So
with a lot of those coming in the fourth quarter.
Yeah,
with a lot of
good.
that, exactly.
Yes.
A lot of the garbage time yards, as we like to call them.
The insignificant yards, as coaches call them.
There you go. It was the second straight week that the Eagles did not get at least 275 total yards, which you don't see a lot in the NFL these days.
Yep.
And the second straight week, they averaged less than 5 yards per play.
And if I remember correctly, they only ran about 50 some odd plays, which is a really low number in the NFL.
It is. So there's a lot of layers of the onion to peel
Right,
back here.
right.
I mean, we could talk about the lack of a run game. We can talk about Jalen Hurts' struggles. We can talk about wide receiver separation issues. But, Greg, I'll ask you to start off.
Well,
when you look at the offense in general.
Yeah, and that's the way I think we need to start.
Yeah.
I think there needs to be a micro view of this as opposed to a specific game view.
Sure.
I'm sure a lot of people didn't think they would beat the Bucs, so let's put that game aside. Let's understand what Jalen Hurts is and what his background is. Jalen Hurts has always been a shotgun quarterback. He's always been highly athletic. The questions about him have always been inconsistency as a passer. That's been the Jalen Hurts profile through Alabama, even to some degree through Oklahoma, and coming into the NFL. So what has Nick Sirianni and the Eagles coaching staff tried to do? They've tried to play to what Jalen Hurts is. He's not an under-center drop-back quarterback at this point in his career. So what have they done? They've put him in the shotgun. They've run a lot of RPOs. They've run him by design. They've tried to play to what he is. Because in the NFL, you have to play to what your quarterback's strengths are, and you have to minimize his limitations. So I've read a lot recently about a bad marriage between Nick Sirianni and Jalen Hurts. Nick Sirianni is actually trying to do what Jalen Hurts' strengths are.
Yes.
But now let's get to the tape. What the tape shows right now, that's all we can speak to. We don't know what's going to happen today, in 3 weeks, in a month, next year, if whatever happens. But the tape shows right now that Jalen Hurts is not a consistent enough passer where the ball can be in his hands like this, and you can ask him to be the driving force of your offense, particularly as a passer. He's inconsistent. So he'll have games again like the Chiefs where he threw the ball well. Then he'll have games against the Bucs where he misses routine throws. And the problem with that is you don't know what you're going to get week to week. So you feel kind of good about your approach. You just don't know if it's going to be executed on a weekly basis.
Sure. I've asked him about the identity of his offense in his press conference.
There is an identity.
And he struggles, though, to articulate it. But to me, the identity is right now is what you're saying.
Yeah.
He's RPO heavy, a college offense, as a lot of people have told us. And it seems like the one thing he has said, Greg and Adam, I'll ask both of you guys, is that he also has said a wise man knows that you don't go to the extremes on anything, right? But when you look at his offense, and to your point, him trying to cater so much to what Jalen Hurts does well, the run has clearly gone to the wayside.
And by the way, you can still run the ball doing this, because one thing I will say, in the NFL, this is not college football, in the NFL, RPO is not a run game, not in the NFL.
Right.
So what's happened is they have gone to extremes, no question. And because of that, there's no run game. There's no physical element to their offense. So there's nothing to fall back on. See, more often than not in the NFL, unless you have a truly great quarterback, and obviously whatever Jalen Hurts becomes or doesn't become, that time will tell.
Right.
But he's not that right now.
Right.
That's not, I'm not saying anything out of school by saying he's not a great quarterback.
Right.
Most teams, if they do not have that higher level quarterback, when the offense struggles, the way they develop some continuity and stability is to run the football. That's what most teams do. The Eagles have not done that. Now, you can debate that, and I know a lot of people have really strong feelings about that. I personally believe they need to run the ball.
Yeah.
And they need to run the ball as a foundational element to their offense, not as an RPO.
And Adam, I think we saw this last year. Greg, you might be able to back it up, but I vaguely remember there were times where Doug said, put Jalen behind center for a handoff and just worked the running game. I know he's a primarily shotgun guy, but Adam, don't you see today like the opportunity here for Nick to say, I have gone to the extremes, which is what I'm not supposed to do. I've got to be able to do fundamental A and fundamental B, and if it's not the most catering to Jalen Hurts' strength, that's fine.
Yeah, look, we had talked about it in previous shows with Greg and Jason about potentially putting him under center a little bit, just to change up. Get it what we call a natural run element.
Sure.
Where you actually have a running back normally set up, instead of having them to boxcar here, boxcar there. Just do it normally. But the other thing is, in the first half, I understand that analytics will tell you, and we've always said this, you should come out throwing more than running it. But this is to the extreme, as Greg mentioned. You're talking about your starting running back getting 1 carry. Some games he gets 3 carries in the first half. Sometimes he doesn't get a carry till the 4th series. This is ridiculous.
Yeah.
Like, this is so extreme. No one could ever predict this. And I do wonder, because we know coaches script, or they have an idea of what they want to do coming into the game. Is this what he really plans to do? How are you helping your quarterback when he's not playing well?
Right.
You have a run game. You have to try something different. And now you play an Oakland front, or Las Vegas front, that might be without one of the. Quintin Jefferson has a personal issue. He hasn't been with the team this week. They're not stout inside. Their ends are fast. We'll get into the matchups later. There is yet another opportunity. Like last week, Vita Vea. Okay, I get it. You don't want to run up the middle against him. Okay, you could run against the Raiders. We'll get into some of the numbers that we have. This is a one-off opportunity once again to get Miles Sanders involved.
Yeah, Greg, you just said something that I've been thinking about all week, about what do you fall back on? And the big question I've had for Nick Sirianni and the Eagles offense is, where do you hang your hat on? At some point, when you're devising a game plan, it's not always about what the opponent is doing, it's about what you do, and what do you do well?
Again, without getting into Nick Sirianni's head, I will reiterate in some ways what I said before. My guess is he believes that he's playing to the strength of his quarterback. The quarterback, though, is very inconsistent right now. And you have a player in Miles Sanders. You actually have 2 good backs, but Miles Sanders is a good back.
Right.
And right now, you're not utilizing one of the best players on your offense. And that's where the issue arises. You can say that, hey, we have Jalen Hurts, this is what he does, this is what we think he does well, and we're trying to maximize what his strengths are and minimize his limitations, but you can't do that to the exclusion of one of the best players on your offense.
Right.
So that's the issue. Plus, then it comes down to how you choose to run the ball. You know, at some point, and I know Adam made this point, and there's a lot of people who believe that the passing game, and we've kind of come full circle with that in the league to the point where people think the run game is irrelevant. The run game is not irrelevant. You know, there's a difference between saying you don't need a great back and the run game is irrelevant. And people will use Thursday night's game to make the point that, oh, don't pay running backs because Dearness Johnson came in and ran for 146 yards.
Like he's going to do that every game.
But that's a different question than saying the run game is irrelevant.
Right.
Okay?
Right.
That's a question of allocation of resources.
Sure.
Whether you want to pay a running back.
Sure.
But the run game is not irrelevant.
Right.
And there is a physical element to the National Football League. And the Eagles are not using that physical element at all.
What's interesting, though, Greg and Jeff, is that Greg talks about they're not using that physical element. The Eagles have always believed in the offensive defensive lines. Look at the resources they've invested in their offensive line.
Sure.
And we all know this. If you talk to an offensive lineman, they want to get off the ball. They love when they run. You know, they'd
All
rather
offensive linemen do.
Right.
Yeah.
So this is what you're talking about. And Jeff and I just talked about this on our show last week. There's zero physicality to this offense.
Right.
Not just with the offensive line. They don't do anything with a physical nature. Goedert is that one guy who's going to be back today. Now, he can do that.
Yeah, he's the big physical playmaker.
Think of it this
they
way.
need.
I'll make an analogy. We all know the goal in the NFL is to create explosive plays offensively. Percentage-wise, you get far more of those in the pass game, correct? That's
Sure.
just percentage-wise.
Sure.
But it's the process of how you get to them. Think of it in terms of boxing. We know that boxing, you'd like to, knock the other guy out.
Yep.
But you don't just go out and swing wildly and hope that you happen to hit the guy in the jaw.
Right.
There's a science to it. There's an approach.
Wear
There's a
down.
process.
Yes.
Sure,
Yeah.
sure.
How do you get to that? So for the Eagles, it's how do you get to the explosive pass plays?
Right.
And there's different ways. There's not one way to do that. And the Eagles are basically taking the approach now that if there's one way to do that, we're simply going to put the ball in Jalen Hurts' hands and I hate to use this word, but hope that we get explosive plays.
Sure, sure. No, I mean, that's something that we talked about. I remember after the Dallas game, the idea of sequencing, about running plays now to set up different plays later. Slant, sluggo, something of that.
It's fascinating you use
what
the
you're
word
doing.
sequencing because
Yeah.
in the NFL, and this I think has come in from the college game a lot, the college game is nowhere near about sequencing as much as the NFL game, and certainly the way the NFL game has been for many years. Good offensive coaches in the NFL build play upon play after play, concept upon concept upon concept. The college game is much more about, here's a great individual play that we can run, and we think it can produce a big play.
Right.
And sequencing is a very important thing to me anyway, and maybe it's because I'm a little older and old school and have gotten to talk to over many years a lot of great NFL coaches, but sequencing is important for most NFL offensive coaches.
Sure, sure. It felt to me that the lack of that and sort of the predictability you saw against Tampa Bay, it seemed like whether it was Shaq Barrett, I mean, they were on the read option, they were on the RPO.
Right.
I know that Jason Avant and Quintin Mikell, and Jason will be with us in a little bit, have talked about teams kind of showing one defensive look, expecting an RPO, but then switching into man to really, because everybody seems to have a step on what the Eagles want to do.
So let me get to the sequencing as you guys were talking about. Week 2, right? The Eagles knew going in, the Niners were without a lot of their corners, right? Richard Sherman had to play. It's Josh Norman had to play.
Yeah.
They knew it coming in. This is what we're going to come out and we're going to throw the football. But there, as Greg was talking about, there's no lead up to that. It was like bombs away, bombs away. They hit one with Quez Watkins for 91 yards. All the other, they took 6 shot plays, only hit one of them. There was no intermediate pass game. There was no rhythm to anything that they do.
Right.
So when you ask Jalen Hurts about, when you ask Jalen Hurts about, what's the identity? Well, most offenses have an identity, and I don't agree with Nick Sirianni. I think that's nonsense about a team not knowing what their identity is.
They know they have an identity.
Of course they do.
Right.
Yeah.
They're throwing the football, but it's how you get to those throws.
Right.
They don't have that.
But here's a perfect example. In that game against the Niners, and you'll remember this play on the first series, they had Devonta Smith wide open on a deep over route.
Yep.
And Hurts was late with the throw, and he left it short. So that's the example where you want to play to his strengths, but right now, he's not quite at the level where you can do that.
Right.
Because there's a perfect example where in their mind, they made a play call on the first possession, which means that was game planned. That was not something they saw during the game and said, hey, we think we can get this. That was game plan, and they got it.
Right.
And he missed it.
Right. So Sirianni has talked about at times this year when things aren't going right, he has to remember players over plays, right?
Well,
so Dallas, I know it's easy to say.
That's another fascinating debate.
But he said a lot of coaches he's been around, and I've heard this too, have specific plays drawn up for certain players. Now, granted, the quarterback's sometimes got to get him the ball, but there's also, again, the running game.
But that raises the question of who are these players? They're wide receivers. You have 2 second-year wide receivers and a first-year wide receiver.
Sanders,
exactly.
Gainwell.
Goedert today, Miles Sanders today.
Right.
I mean, you would think it'd have
it's
to
easy
be
to
in the
say
game.
that,
right?
And there was actually, a lot of coaches talk about that. Depending on situational football, hey, sometimes if we know we're going to get man coverage, if you have a great receiver, you know what? We're going to throw it to him. Because you know what? That's DeAndre Hopkins. We feel really good about that. Do the Eagles have that guy? It's always a debate with offensive coaches about scheme versus players.
Sure.
And,
I think the Eagles are at the point where scheme has to be first.
But you also have to adjust. If you see something, let's say, you get a more advantageous coverage, like we saw against Tennessee Monday night when they found A.J. Brown open repeatedly over the middle. Well, if it's open, take it.
That was scheme.
Okay, fine. That if you think you can do that, you do it.
Right.
Here, with these coaches week to week, I don't have a feel for what they're trying to be.
Right.
Greg, you grade the tape better than anyone that I know. What do you think? Okay, we say we know what their identity is. They're going to throw the football. But within that identity, what do you think they're trying to accomplish?
That's a great question. And that's where the scheme part comes in because, we talked about the Raiders and let's say their use of bunch. Every team, every passing game, and even the Eagles, and I know fans might think, oh, no, because they're not playing well, but every passing game starts with concepts. It's route concepts and combinations. Now, do you get points where in the game where it's one-on-one and you think, okay, the quarterback comes to the line of scrimmage, he sees press man, and he says, hey, I'm going to throw it to Devonta Smith, I like that matchup. That happens in every game with receivers and corners. But ultimately, the pass game is built on concepts.
Right.
And you have concepts that are man-beater concepts. You have concepts that are zone-beater concepts. You have concepts that incorporate both, depending on what coverage you get. And I guess when I watch the Eagles, I don't get a sense that there's a flow to that.
Yeah.
And that's
disjointed
Yeah,
is the
yes.
term Adams
Yeah.
sources have used before. All right, so let's parlay that into Jalen Hurts' performance,
Right.
because one of the common things, defenses of Jalen Hurts you'll hear around the city is, how can you expect him to play well with this play calling, right? The common denominator among all someone who wants to defend Jalen Hurts
let me
to
ask
say,
you a question, not you personally.
yeah,
What does that even mean?
That's what I'm getting at, is that when you watch it, do you feel like the throws that he's missing are because the play calling is not advantageous or is not good for the matchup that they're seeing, or is he just missing
No.
throws?
You know, this is my pet peeve, and I'm sure I'll get ripped on Twitter for
Join the crowd.
for all this. And I've been watching coaching tape since 1992. Okay. Adam
Since
knows
you were
me
10?
for a long time. Right. Adam knows me for a long time. I'm not on Twitter. I'm not a self-promoter. I don't go around saying, "Look at me." You know, I know. I've spent a lot of time with a lot of really smart coaches in my career. People have no clue about play calling. They have no clue about what goes into a game plan. That is an argument when people say that, that they're only saying because the team's not playing well. They have no idea.
Right.
No, I don't have an idea. You have to be in the meetings to know about that kind of stuff.
Right.
So when Jalen Hurts misses a guy with a bad throw, the play doesn't work, right? Is that bad play calling? People, this discussion, and I'm just being honest with you, this discussion is worthless. We could spend our time having much better conversations.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
listen, I hear things, Jalen Hurts, most of his throws go to the right. Oh, well, they got to stop designing all these play calls to the right. As if, only you got 5 wide receivers who all line up to the right
As if
and
the
only
people
run
know that the
routes to
play
the
is
right.
designed to go to the right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, or as if you can even see it on TV,
Yeah.
5 guys all lined up to the right, and they all run the
Exactly.
same route on the right side. So he's forced to throw it to the right because that's where
It's funny
all the
because when I
receivers
do
are.
radio shows with teams that are not playing well, and let's say the producer comes on before and says, "Hey, they want to talk about play calling," I say, "No, don't ask me about that." Because I'm not in the meetings. I don't know. I don't know what the game plan is. I don't know what they're discussing in the meetings.
Right.
I've been in my career. I've been in meetings. Okay. I've been fortunate enough to sit during training camp in meetings, and a lot of times, because I have no offensive coordinators, offensive coaches, and I'll say to them, "Hey, it looked to me like so and so was open, and that was part of it." And they'll say, "No, that wasn't part of the progression."
Right.
So people you just don't know any of that stuff at all.
So the one thing I'll say is, I did ask Nick Sirianni this week, or no, somebody else did. I wanted to, but somebody else jumped in me. And he said, are you doing what you're doing from a play calling standpoint because that's what you think will get the best play out of Jalen Hurts, or would you do this with any quarterback? And someone else said, well, what do you do to get him out of the rut when he's in a rut? And his response was, we've got to make him more comfortable. Whether it's the drop back game, whether it's the screen game, whether it's the quick game, we need to make Jalen Hurts more comfortable. I understand that. I think a coach's job is to put a player in position to succeed. However, I also know, I think we all know, when you're playing in the NFL and you're a quarterback, the defense's #1 priority every single week is to make the quarterback uncomfortable, and you can't have 100% comfortability on every single play for your quarterback. But it does feel like they are, with so many RPOs and so much quick game, we talk about the lag flow, that they're really trying so hard to keep it to what he does best, that we go back to the extremes.
And at some
point, they've not let him they've not let themselves go out and say, can he do this?
Some games will play out where you can do that, like the Atlanta game week 1, where it played out, they came out and everything was either one read or no read, and because of the way the game played out, they were able to stay with it. Other games won't play out that way. You can't do that when it's 3rd and 9.
Right.
Defense has the tactical advantage when it's 3rd and 9.
Yep.
Then your quarterback has to drop back and make throws, make difficult throws.
And that's been an issue, Adam, with the Eagles' offense, is that they are not doing well enough on 1st and 2nd down, and Nick Sirianni talked about that, to put Jalen in really good, favorable 2nd and short or 3rd and short type of down and distance scenarios. And you saw that against Tampa Bay a lot.
Yeah, speaking of that game, you look at it, right? They got ball control by 20 minutes. They only
Yeah.
had the ball 20
Yeah, they
minutes.
hardly
Bucks
had
had
the
about
ball.
40.
That's amazing.
That can't happen. And part of it, we looked at the first 2 series of the game where the Eagles were not competitive defensively. Then they made some changes. But offensively, it goes back to what our foundation talk here. What are they trying to accomplish?
Right.
I think sometimes they get, you were talking about players over players or plays over players. I think Sirianni gets too carried away with what the matchups look like, and he forgets, okay, our quarterback right now can't probably handle that kind of volume. Mm-hmm. Let's get the playmakers the ball. We talked about Sanders. Gainwell, we need to mention him. This is a guy who looked like he was going to be a player this season. All of a sudden, they've lost him. They haven't got him the football.
Right.
Dallas Goedert comes back today. Devontae Smith cannot be the only receiver who gets it a lot. Another discussion.
He's a rookie.
Right, I understand. No, but he's getting the ball a lot.
Yeah.
But he's going to be a good player, but he's a rookie.
Quez Watkins needs to get the football. This is a guy that other teams we talk to, Jeff, they are amazed at how explosive he looks on tape. We know that they like to line him up as a vertical slot. Could he expand his role? You've seen his tape, Jeff.
Yeah,
Greg?
I mean, he can run. I mean,
But is he more than that guy, though?
Here's the situation. You mentioned first and second down, and the reason why that's so critical is because when you get into longer yardage situations, the playbook shrinks. There's not, when you're in normal down and distance, first and 10, second and 4, the playbook is bigger. When you get into long yardage, it shrinks.
Right.
The defense knows that.
Right.
That's football.
And that's the one area where I can understand someone who says, well, how can you expect Jalen Hurts to play well with the coach's play calling? It's not the design.
Right.
It's not where, but when your coach is not giving you a better opportunity on first and second down for your quarterback to be better positioned on third down, then that falls on the coaching staff's responsibility as well as the quarterback. Adam, a question on YouTube from Jason White. What will it take for Jalen Hurts to solidify himself as the quarterback of the future? I mean,
He'd have to play really, really
yeah.
well. And obviously, they've got 11 games to make a final decision. But we always tell you results give you the blueprint of where this is going.
Right.
Unless he improves significantly, he won't be the quarterback next year. I think we all know that. It's obvious. No, but he'll have an opportunity to turn this around.
Yeah.
But as we go through this discussion, at some point, we need to see throws, and we'll get into that as this show progresses, especially when we bring Jason in. When throws are there to be made, and it's really hard for coaches because they know they have the thing designed well, and it's protected well, you got to throw the ball accurately. And you also have to see it through your progression. Okay,
Here.
it's wide open.
Great point. Second play of the game against the Bucks. He just overthrows Devonta Smith, who's wide open.
Wide
He
open.
ran a great route against Richard Sherman. Great route. Got to make that. I mean, you got to make that throw.
Right. NFL quarterback makes that
So
throw.
I guess that was bad play calling.
No, but here's the problem, Greg. On that play, there are too many of those in each game. It's not like
Well,
one or
that's-
two. There might be 8 or 9
Right.
of them where he either doesn't pull the trigger or he overthrows.
Yeah.
These are designed well.
And we've talked about the not keeping the eyes downfield, fleeing the pocket, and also the dropping of the hands. I know on the underthrown pass to Jalen Reagor that drew a pass interference, it appears that he brought his arm
and
back
that ball
down.
lost energy on the back end.
Right.
That ball died.
Which we've seen a couple of
Yeah,
times this
yeah.
year. Is that just simply the base not being planted and firm and the windup, or
Could be, because I don't think he has a bad arm. He doesn't have a gun, but he doesn't
Right.
have a bad
Yeah.
arm.
No.
No, and that's usually a mechanical thing when the ball loses energy on the back end.
Right. To answer Jason's question, Adam, fully, I mean, I think
Yeah.
we also need to go back and kind of remind people, which we like to do
yeah.
here
Yeah,
without
yeah.
trying to offend anyone, that when Jalen Hurts was drafted in the second round, the Eagles were not lying when they said they saw him as a high-end backup and that they really felt that the way the NFL was going, you need to have good backup quarterbacks that you're not spending 7 to 10 to whatever 20 million, whatever
Right.
Nick Foles was making in that last year. That they did not see him being the starting quarterback this year. Remember, they had just signed Carson Wentz a year before.
9 months before.
To
Yes.
9 months before to a long term. It's an amazing how
I
that
know.
got distorted,
forget. People
and people
forget.
thought this was like a plan from the start.
No.
It was not ever the plan from the start.
No, it was Howie Roseman, Jeffrey Lurie, whoever it was. We know that Roseman was the one who made the call.
Right.
They saw some things, some traits that they really liked, and they thought he could be their backup of the featured for a minimum of 3 years, and then maybe flip the pick in the 4th year.
Right.
If whenever Wentz would get hurt, if he played well, because we know, look, We've seen guys get contracts. I'm old enough to remember Rob Johnson got a contract off of one game.
Yeah,
I remember that.
Against the Ravens. He went off of all teams to go against.
I know,
right?
yeah.
See, you remember that.
And then many years later, Matt Flynn.
Matt Flynn did, right, and he got a contract with the Seahawks, and Russell Wilson
That's right.
replaced him. But the fact of the matter is, Jeff, they never gave any thought to that he could be the long-term starter. So, and most people that you and I talked to before the draft said either third or fourth round grade.
Correct.
Which is a low-end starter, high-end backup.
And by the way,
That's
I
where
think
we are.
I think he's, in fairness, let's see how the next 11 games go. But I would say he's outperformed what you would expect from a third to fourth round quarterback, because those guys have maybe probably a 10% chance of even finding.
Yeah, but we're seeing
starting 10 games in the league.
Yeah, but we're seeing the limitations now of a third or fourth round pick.
We are.
We've mentioned many times. I know Greg saw the tape last year against Arizona. He made some good throws in that game. He played well.
Yeah.
We've seen two games where we were like, okay, this season the Chiefs game you brought up. The Atlanta game was a gimmick game where they made it as easy as they could. Chiefs game, he made some really good throws. But you're seeing too much of a variance. But the hope is with 11 games left to move this thing forward here, you see better play, improvement, where you go, okay, now we're starting to see it. If you're Jalen Hurts, you want to put it in their mind that it's not going to be an easy decision for them.
Right.
That I want to be in the thinking for next year to be the starter.
Yeah. By the way, we have some video from Nick Sirianni from earlier this week discussing his response when he was asked how he can get Jalen Hurts more positioned for success. And let's hear from the Eagles head coach.
You got to do it with making them feel comfortable with the plays that you're calling. And what you're doing, right? And so we're talking about the drop back pass game, we're talking about the play action game, we're talking about the screen game. Like, we just got to do things and that's your evaluation after 6 weeks. What are we doing well? What are we not doing well? Do the things more. And because, when he's feeling comfortable with that, so at first I'm putting it on me that it comes down to play calling of putting him in positions where he feels comfortable with the play to read it out versus the different looks that he's going to get. Because naturally we're seeing some unscouted looks because we're slightly different than other teams with the way Jalen plays.
All right, that was Eagles coach Nick Sirianni, again, kind of harping on the fact that he needs to make Jalen Hurts more comfortable starting today against the Raiders. Now, here's a term he and the staff have used before that I've never heard other coaching staffs use as much. They constantly talk about the unscouted looks that you get during a game, which I interpret as their way of saying, hey, look, you can game plan for everything, but the defense gets paid too, or the offense gets paid.
Well, that happens in
they're going to
every
throw
game.
in.
They put something in that they didn't see it.
Haven't seen before. But this coach, I guess it's strange to me how often they speak of that and use that term unscouted looks, and it pertains to the quarterback. I mean, again, the expectation is the quarterback's going to see something that he's not seen yet. He's only made 10 starts, and he's facing teams that he's never played against before. So I don't know that Nick Sirianni can prepare him 100% for everything that he's going to see today from the Raiders.
Well, I mean, this is true on both sides of the ball. I remember talking with defensive coordinators over the years and talking about, because all defenses, just like offenses, have certain rules. Okay, you're taught rules. Mm-hmm. So sometimes you see something and it's just a little different look. It's, because there's not 1,000 different things, but it just looks a little different.
Sure.
So what you do at that point is you rely on rules.
Right.
It's like the offensive line with protection. They see a little different thing, and they don't have 3 minutes to figure it out and have a discussion about it.
Right.
So you got to rely on your rules.
Well, let me let me ask you. We have it on here. We'll put it on the screen. We have Jalen Hurts' spray chart of where his throws have been for most of the year, and it's clear when you look at the trends here that between 99 of his 208 attempts are under 10 yards or near the line of scrimmage, and most of them, as we talked before, are in that center to right side of the field area. Is that just his, from what you see, his comfort zone? Like when things start to break down, that's his dominant hand area?
My guess is you could probably do that with a lot of quarterbacks.
Okay.
And say that they like certain kinds of throws.
Mm-hmm. I think you would prefer that those throws were a little bit at least deeper or spread out, though, and not all
in an ideal world, but
yeah.
Again, I don't do that kind of thing necessarily, so I don't know.
Gotcha.
For every quarterback in the league, but I would bet that every quarterback, even great ones, has specific tendencies that the coaching staff knows about, the defense knows about,
right?
And you have to work through all that.
Sure. Well, his lowest passer ratings on these throws are in the middle of the field. I find that pretty interesting.
His lowest, you mean?
Lowest passer rating are on throws to the middle of the field that are short. Incidentally, Alex Singleton said this week, one of the reasons why Eagles linebackers are targeted is because the middle of the field is the easier throw for the quarterback to make. I don't think he was trying to throw Jalen Hurts under the bus. He had no idea that Jalen Hurts was even a discussion, but I thought it was very interesting that he said that. Real quick before we go to our Q's Views segment, just because I have to make people mad, Greg. Carson Wentz, what have you seen from him last 2 weeks?
Oh, stop it.
No, seriously.
No, he's been good,
I
right?
really asked that because people thought he was a broken quarterback.
Right,
And they were very fine to move on to Jalen Hurts, thinking that Carson Wentz was done. And it seems like he's not done.
He's playing really well this year. In fact, I did a piece on him in my matchup show this week. He's been phenomenal off play action. He's played under center a lot. The play action pass game, which defines reads and throws very, very well. He's been hitting his back foot. The ball's been coming out. He looks poised. He looks composed. He's throwing the ball accurately. He's been as good a deep ball thrower through 6 games as there is in the league. This is, and I'm only speaking to what the tape shows through 6 games. I can't tell you what's going to happen today, next week, or the week after. But through 6 games, he's played extremely well. He's not moving around very much, recklessly with that undisciplined feel. He's not getting stuck in the pocket, which we saw in Philadelphia all the time over these last 2 years. So right now, he looks more like the player that everybody thought he was going to become, and for his career than he has the last couple of years in Philadelphia. So he's playing at a pretty high level right now.
Big road game today for Wentz and the Colts against the San Francisco 49ers. We'll see if they can keep it up.
Rain tonight, by the bay.
We are going to go to our segment that we do every pregame show with former Eagle safety Quintin Mikell called Q's Views. And when we come back, Jason Avant, his co-host, will join us. So in this episode of Q's Views, we talk about what happens when you're going out west on a losing streak. Okay, we're here with former Eagles Pro Bowl safety, Quintin Mikell. Got to get that right. Co-host of the Q&A show on Inside the Birds alongside Jason Avant. Q, it's hard to believe the Eagles are going out Sunday to play the Raiders. The Eagles are 2-4. The Raiders are 4-2. This is not your father's NFL. It's quite a different landscape now. Raiders look pretty good. They've been inconsistent. The Eagles obviously just trying to find consistency. Put your coaching cap on. You're the head coach of the Eagles. You just went through a rough stretch. What's your message to the team this week?
If I'm the head coach, I'll put my hat on. All right, I walk into the locker room. I say, all right, guys, right now, so far we have not had a perfect game. The team that we're playing has not had a perfect game as well. This is a perfect opportunity to reset and restart our run. This is a chance for us to come out and make a statement against a team that thinks that they're on the up and up. All right, we need to be the team that comes out of this on the up and up. And so this is a perfect opportunity for us to come into this stadium and to their home field and just try to demolish them the best way we can. So to me, I think that's what needs to happen. They need to look at this game like an opportunity to come from the bottom, as a bottom feeder, and really take an opportunity to show not just themselves, but the rest of the NFL that they can compete with any team. So this is an important game.
Right. You look at the schedule, and they've had to play in the first 6 weeks. They had to play last year's Super Bowl champion, the year before Super Bowl champion, and of course another contender, at least it looks like right now, in the Dallas Cowboys. So that was 3 of your first 6 were really difficult. And obviously the Eagles are kind of in their own transition with a first-year head coach, coordinator, and quarterback. And now you look at the schedule and you see after the Raiders game, they'll have the Lions, who are winless up to this point. Of course, the Chargers, but then the Broncos, who look very uneven. So I wonder if and the Saints are on the schedule. Do you see this Raiders game as a crossroads type of game for this team?
Yeah, I mean, looking at the outset, we kind of had a feeling that this team would kind of be where they were at, give or take a game or two, going into this Raiders game. And the thing that's really more surprising is how much better the Raiders are. I had a suspicion that they would be a little bit okay, but with their inconsistency over the years, it was a more difficult thing to predict. But now looking at it and seeing just kind of the disparity between the last few games between the Eagles, kind of up and down, and the Raiders up and down, this is at the point where this is a game that I thought earlier it would be like a kind of a no-brainer, but now like it just kind of feels like it feels like this is the type of game that really um is, I wouldn't say it's a trap game, but it's a game that, looking at it at the outset, I thought maybe it was a trap game, but now it's like a must-win type of situation. So this is definitely kind of the midpoint of the I would say the difficulty scale, and
Sure.
moving further on, we should be okay against the rest of the teams. But right now, it's a tough one. Sorry, I kind of went off on a tangent there, but yeah, it's a pivotal game for me for the Eagles. Sorry.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Let's talk about the defense because, again, they face so many good offenses, but here they face a Raiders offense that doesn't run the ball great. Josh Jacobs is not having a great year. They do throw the ball fairly well, but it's not necessarily a dynamic offense all the time. Have you seen some changes over the last 2 weeks with the Eagles defense and with Jonathan Gannon's scheme that has given you just a little bit more optimism than maybe, say, the first 3 or 4 games?
Yeah, I have seen a lot. I think the biggest change that I've seen has been in the front. They've been doing a lot more of an odd front, um, more of a kind of 60, 62 or 52 type front, which has worked pretty well to stop the run and to make our defensive line, our front seven, a little bit more stout, which is it's helped in the running game pretty well. I think the biggest issue is still going to be the middle of the field. It's tough to take away everything, especially with a team like this. I mean, you load the box up, you put 5-man fronts, and now you got to deal with Waller at tight end coming over the middle and attacking the linebacker. So it's going to be kind of a good thing. I love seeing more variety in the defense. I love seeing that we're paying more attention to stopping the run. The next step for this defense is it's always going to be, for me, we need to be able to create more pressure, and however way Coach Gannon decides that he wants to do it, we got to be able to create more pressure, and then we just have to be more disciplined in the back end. I think if we do those three things, and it's kind of slowly been progressing to that point, but if we do those three things, particularly more discipline in the back end and continue to stop the run, I think this defense has got something going.
All right. Well, when you played for Andy Reid here in Philadelphia, the last few years of your career, the team was kind of known for shuffling linebackers in and out, almost seemingly new linebackers each year, and sometimes more than two or three in the same year. Davion Taylor is now getting his opportunity to play a second-year linebacker. He was a third-round pick last year, didn't play a whole lot, and then didn't play a whole lot as he dealt with injuries earlier this year. We already know the challenges facing Davion Taylor, but what are the challenges, as you mentioned, the back end of the defense? What are the challenges for the teammates when you have a guy with such little experience out there?
Yeah, I think when he's out there, for the most part, I think they use him more as a kind of a defensive end. They kind of have him rushing, and they have him dropping a little bit. But I think the biggest problem that is always going to, not want to say always, but when you have a young player like that, that's aggressive and that comes off the ball and plays the run well, is you're going to be missing some lanes in the back end. And I think that's one of the situations where um, communication helps. It always helps in a defense. And let's say I'm a linebacker. I'll say I'm a middle linebacker, and I know that on a certain play from film study that a certain formation may make us think that it's run, but it could possibly be a pass. So I'm gonna look over at my linebacker, my young linebacker Taylor, and like, hey, listen, be smart here, be smart here. Read your keys, read your keys. And it's just little things like that, I think, that help a young player develop. You can also learn the hard way, which is take a wrong step and then get beat, or you can have somebody that's around you that kind of give you a little tip before the snap. So I think those are the ways that he can help, and that's the way that I think is best is get together with some vets on the team, and then pre-snap just talk and communicate.
All right, Q, I see you got your Boise State Broncos shirt on, and I don't know if that's some kind of veiled message you're trying to send because last week the Raiders played the Broncos and they kicked the Denver Broncos' butts in, as you were talking about before, in their first game without John Gruden. Now they come home for the Eagles. What do you see happening in this game?
Oh, I've been racking my brain all week on this game. I The inconsistencies of both teams has been so weird, and really the turmoil, so to speak, of both teams. It's going to be a. I feel like the Eagles. I don't know why. This is the game. I feel like the Eagles finally put it together. You got you got an offense that's kind of trying to still find their niche. You lose a tight end in a trade, Zach Ertz, who everyone beloved. I think it's the perfect time for like a rallying cry, kind of circle the wagons type of moment. So I feel like the Eagles are going to pull this one out. I got them winning a high scoring game, 28-25. Let's not 25. Let's go 28-24 this week. Let's go. It's not really high scoring, but I guess for the Eagles lately, that's considered a high scoring. So I'll say 28-24 Eagles.
All right, Quintin Mikell sees an Eagles victory in their first ever trip out to Las Vegas at Allegiant Stadium. Thanks, Q.
No problem. Thanks.
All right, that was our good friend Quintin Mikell with Q's views, guys. And coming out of this situation with the Eagles, and Jason, you know this from traveling. Whether it's Seattle, and you're an East Coast team to West Coast team, how tough is it with the change in time zones?
It's very tough. There's all types of studies in telling teams when they need to, prepare and when they should leave. But it's a tough thing to do. I think it's tougher later in the season than earlier in the season. I think we're in an early, season mark, and then we're just coming off a early game, so it doesn't really matter.
Well, it's funny because some years I know the Eagles would do this. They would leave on a Friday for West Coast game. Now that teams are almost all leaving on Saturday from going east to west, Jeff, because we're just talking about when to leave and how much changing 3 time zones. This year, teams that have gone west to east are 8-2, just straight up without the point spread. So it has not been a factor from west to east with the 3 time zones. So
right.
But with travel now, you're charting your own jet. It doesn't seem to be that big of a deal.
I noticed this a couple of years ago. The Seahawks had to play about 5 or 6 games. I think this is not last year, but the year before, on the East Coast at 1 o'clock. And they had started off 4-1 or 5-0 in those games. They were really bucking the trend because everybody was talking about the statistic. It was almost at one point up to 70% chance that the East Coast team would win a 1 o'clock game against a West Coast team traveling in. But as you mentioned, not only has that changed, but also home teams are not winning at the same clip that they historically have won at in the NFL. So a lot of trends seemingly getting reversed now.
Yeah, I know when Chip Kelly was in, he was really into the sports science of that, and they did the studies on the Olympic teams and when they were going to altitude and all those things, and they came up with that teams that travel within the 48 hours before your body adapts to the time change, you would do a lot better.
Right.
And after that 48 hours, you would do substantially worse. So teams are starting to adapt that, I guess.
Interesting stuff. All right, we are back. I want to let you guys know Public Square and Rebel Hill are also back. The team of James and Zach are back behind the controls, bringing Inside the Birds to you in high definition with great graphics, videos, and more. Contact Public Square Media and Rebel Hill Productions to produce your webcast, podcast, live show, or anything else you can dream of. This team can bring it to life. We always thank Zach and James from Public Square and Rebel Hill. Again, if you're watching the show, please leave us a comment. We're trying to get to our questions and comments a little bit more on YouTube. We've already answered Jason White's question and a lot more to talk about today. So go ahead.
I was just going to say, I'd love to just get Jason. I don't want to screw up your format.
No, go
I'd
ahead.
love to get Jason's point of view here because we had a really good discussion, I thought, about the Eagles and their identity. And a lot of people think they don't have an identity. And I said they do have an identity. Some might think it's the wrong identity, but they do have an identity. I'm talking about offensively.
Yeah.
That they've
RPO,
decided
quick
essentially
game.
that they're going to build what they do around what they believe to be Jalen Hurts' strengths and to minimize his limitations. Now, one can argue it's not working, or one can argue it's the wrong identity, but what do you think? I mean, I think they have an identity.
Yeah, after 6 games, you start to build that identity. Do I think that it's the identity that you want, like you said?
Right.
Absolutely not. But teams know that the Eagles are going to try to get the ball out of his hands as quick as possible, make it limit his reads, and to do RPO. So that's becoming their identity.
What they are.
That's what they are at this point and at this time. But I don't think that's a sustainable identity at this level or the NFL, the highest level. So I'm looking forward to see if they can change that and get Miles Sanders more involved, get Dallas Goedert more involved, seeing Zach Ertz is gone. So hopefully they can change that up. I don't think that you're going to change Jalen Hurts' mentality first. Hear what I say. There was a report that you guys just mentioned earlier about him not going to the middle of the field. The reason he doesn't go to the middle of the field at this level, yes, Alex Singleton said it's the easiest throw. It's the easiest throw physically. It's not the easiest throw mentally. Right? There's more bodies in the middle of the field. A lot more bodies, and if you don't understand what you're looking at, it can be confusing. So I'd rather go to the outside where I know what's going on, if I can see that easy coverage. So I go Devontae Smith, I go to Jalen Reagor. Even though it's a low percentage throw, I'll go there a lot of the time because I know what's going on, and I understand that. I don't understand all of these guys moving into the middle of the field.
Well, therein lies the issue when you feel like the lower percentage throw is your more comfortable throw.
Well, it's so funny to hear you say that, because I remember years ago, and I don't know if you know him well, but Kevin O'Connell, who's now the OC for the Rams.
Yes, actually his combine. I met him
anyway,
at the combine. Yeah,
he wanted to be, before he got into coaching, he thought about going into broadcasting, and he was in our broadcast boot camp.
He was drafted by the
NFL
Patriots, right?
Third round out of San Diego State. I think San Diego State.
Boyer beat him out.
But anyway, so he was in our boot camp, and I got to know him pretty well, and we had some great conversations. And he said, to play off what Jason said, that when he got into the NFL, it said it looked like there were 15 defenders on the field. Because see, in college with the hash marks so wide, there's not a lot of those middle of the field throws where the bodies are condensed. And in the NFL there are. So your point was phenomenal. It's an easy, and I remember Ron Jaworski sitting with him for 100 years talking about those easy throws, right in front of you. What Jason said about those throws are easy physically. Those are easy throws. But there's a lot of bodies there. And it's not so easy to get a clear picture of where you want to throw the ball.
Isn't that, Jason, where your timing and anticipation have to be your best friend?
It's not only timing and anticipation, it's knowing what the defense is doing. Because if a stun is coming and they're dropping the end out, I have to know that. Right? Or if a safety's coming down and I see it pre-snap, I can see, okay, there's an empty space right here where the wheel should be. I know that the safety's coming out of the sky and being there, so I have this backside throw. All of that's football IQ. And if you are not comfortable with that right away, you're going to take what you know best, and that's a one-on-one matchup outside.
Because there's no other bodies out there.
Well, guys, speaking of making the quarterback comfortable versus uncomfortable, when they play the Raiders today, there's two guys in particular on the Raiders defense who are going to try like heck to make Jalen Hurts uncomfortable. Their names are Max Crosby and Yannick Ngakoue. One of them you might be familiar with because, as Adam has reported a couple of times over the years, the Eagles had some interest, right, in Yannick Ngakoue?
They were, but the money was so significant that he wanted, and the Jaguars were not going to pay it. In fact, he wanted out. It's crazy. He went from the Vikings to the Ravens. But the Raiders, by the way, they were really involved in it when he was with the Jaguars. In fact, if I recall correctly, Mike Mayock talked John Gruden out of it. He said, hey, let's let this go. Let's see what happens when he's a free agent, because he wanted over $20 million per season. So now they're paying him over 2 years, just $13 million. So they got a better deal, and he's done well in that. Double X Crosby, Max Crosby. He's been a player.
Fourth-round pick from Eastern Michigan a couple of years ago. Now they've combined for 7 sacks, Ngakoue and Crosby. Crosby's 5 are among the NFL leaders, and listen to this: 26 quarterback hits between them, 18 coming just from Crosby alone, who I think had 3 sacks in his last game against Denver. Did he not, Max Crosby? I thought he had a pretty big game against Denver there. I'd have to go check, but he is his 18 quarterback hits tied for first with Myles Garrett for the NFL lead. You mentioned Mike Mayock, and I believe that the emergence of Crosby and him playing well with Ngakoue has helped make people forget that one of Mike's first picks was Cleveland Ferrell out of Clemson at 4th overall, who doesn't even really play for them.
He's a 4th end.
He dresses.
He's a 4th end, but he's not. He's really not a factor.
He gets about 15 snaps a game.
So
he's not been anywhere what they thought they would be.
Versus Denver.
So with Lane Johnson back today at right tackle, Jordan Mailata back at left tackle, Greg, I'll ask you: do these guys on the Raiders switch sides? Like, what is the matchup that we're going to see the most today?
Normally, you see Crosby on the left side of the defense and Ngakoue on the right side. I don't know if that'll be 100%, but that's what you normally see. And keep a couple of other things in mind. This team has one of the lowest blitz percentages in the NFL. So they rush 4, and they rush 4 D linemen. Linebackers are not really part of their pressure packages. And from a coverage perspective, there's not a lot of mystery. It's Gus Bradley. They play a lot of cover 3. They play mostly single high safety, so they play cover 3 predominantly. They also play cover 1, the man version of single high.
Right.
So there's not a lot of mystery to what the Raiders do from a tactical standpoint. And it's one reason why I think that the Eagles actually have a solid opportunity today to do some damage against this defense, because they've got some decent personnel, but they're weak in other areas.
Speaking of that predictability with a cover 3, coaches will tell you cover 3 beaters are tight ends. How do we know that in this game? The tight ends are the second most position targeted against the Raiders, 9.3 targets per game.
Up the seams.
Here's a wonderful opportunity for Dallas Goedert without Zach Ertz, something that we have not seen before, and I know we'll talk about it later.
Yeah.
Dallas talked about this week, though. There's an opportunity here for Dallas Goedert to have a monster game.
Well, yeah, I agree. Back to the rushers, though. One guy has the stats in Crosby, right?
Right.
And the other guy kind of has the name, because Ngakoue just a year ago was very coveted. So,
well, he's very good.
Yeah, which one jumps out to you as when you talk about the matchups? One versus Lane Johnson, the other versus Mailata.
Well, I think they're different looking players on tape. Ngakoue has a little bit of that juice to him, where you go, wow, this guy's got some juice, some burst. Crosby, not that he's slow or plodding, but he doesn't quite look like that.
Right.
But they're different. But they rely on those guys basically for their pass rush. Now, the one thing you have to remember is when you do play Jalen Hurts, and we can talk about his passing and the fact that he's been very inconsistent, is you do have to change up, particularly if you're only going to rush 4. Number one, you're going to use a spy. Okay, they've used Littleton, by the way, over the course of the season as a spy. And number 2 is now Ngakoue and Crosby have to be a little more disciplined. They can't just fly up the field. They can't give Hurts vision of green grass,
right?
Because he will take off, and he's a fact. That's a factor, because at this point, Jalen Hurts will do that.
Jay, when you have 2 guys, and especially Ngakoue, who's known for getting upfield very quick with that speed, sometimes with a mobile quarterback, they can use that against the pass rusher, right? If they don't maintain their rush discipline, or if they're so far up the field that the quarterback's got some green to maneuver with, then that's an advantage for Jalen Hurts.
That can be an advantage. It depends on how fast that Littleton is, right?
Right.
That's the key. If you have a guy that can roll and has great pursuit angles and can get a guy on the ground, they also can use it as a plan in order to get him to step up to see and come up with the linebacker. So does it benefit us? It kind of does, right? So when you put the zone coverage on the back end of it, the cover 3, I think those are easier reads when it's a very vanilla deal like we have as a defense, and so I think that you can kind of manipulate that the way that you want.
Right.
In the times of man coverage, I think that's when this team can be vulnerable, because I don't think that they have a Levante David. I've seen Littleton on tape. He's not the same player. He's not that fast at all. So Jalen can make some hay in the run game this week. So that's why I think they can do well. Does
it make sense to feel a little better about Mailata against Crosby than what Andre Dillard might have done? I know Dillard's played better than kind of as advertised, but this Crosby's a pretty physical guy, right? Yeah.
Well, thing about Crosby, Jeff, is interesting. So when they drafted him, he was only 235 pounds.
Right.
6'4.5".
Right.
And during the season, he put on 20 pounds, someone with the Raiders told me. Because they thought he's not going to get on the field a lot unless he puts weight on. And he did. He had a very good rookie season. Not great last year. This season, he's really, really doing well under Gus Bradley. So I'll be interested to see how Mailata does. And by the way, he's off the injury report, not even listed with that MCL sprain. So hopefully they move back to left tackle. They now have 3 of their starters in the lineup, both tackles in their center. Let's see how they play against this Raider front, where, again, really good at ends. There's going to be opportunity to make plays, particularly running the football with those tackles. They're going with these veteran guys. They don't have any young, up-and-coming, explosive players there. So I'll be interested to see what their approach is.
Now, obviously, the one thing you just worry about is if these guys, the 2 edge rushers, pinch the pocket a little bit and Jalen gets out of the pocket and earlier than he should, then you wonder about the function of the offense. And you've heard Nick Sirianni talk about needing to be more on script than off script, and they've gotten away from that lately. And those 2 guys can do that to you.
They can do that to you, but with the predominant zone cover 3 on the back end, when you're moving, you have guys that can find open spots. The problem these last few games, we have teams that can play man-to-man. Now those guys are just plastering, and there's still nobody to throw the ball to, even though you elude the pocket.
Right.
So this week, I think that you're going to be able to find some guys, even if he moves out of the pocket, because they're predominant zone defense.
Sure, sure. Now, on the other side, Derek Carr, as you guys mentioned before, maybe one of the better examples of what happens when you do hit on a second-round pick as a quarterback. He kind of struggled early on in his career, but has developed into their long-term starter, at least for now. But it's always a lesson because every offseason you hear about are the Raiders who are going to replace Derek Carr. Yeah. If you look at his numbers, they're very consistent, even this year. With his, even when they've been bad and when they won 12 games, his numbers are always seemingly pretty good. You see high completion percentage. You see decent amount of touchdowns and interceptions. He kind of is what he is, I feel, at this point of his career. You know what you're getting with Derek Carr.
You do. He's a good player.
Yeah.
And I think one of the things that's changed over the last year and a half is I thought prior to that he was a little bit risk adverse. He wouldn't push the ball down the field. And I think they knew that. And I think, again, Gruden's gone, but this was his 4th year with Gruden. And I think that they've started to design more intermediate and vertical throws for him because he does have a very good arm. He's always had a good arm. Right when he was at Fresno State throwing to Devontae Adams, you saw the arm. I think that they've tried to get him to sort of be a little more open mentally to throw the ball down the field. And in fact, they throw the ball down the field this year more than any team in the NFL.
Glad you brought that up.
They are vertically based.
Yeah, we have
in many ways.
We also have Derek Carr's spray charts on his passes, and what it shows you is, as you just mentioned, on throws 20 or more yards between the hash marks, 7-11 for 258 yards and 2 touchdowns, a 146.8 passer rating. Obviously a bigger part of their offense, but where he's been consistent in his career and this year, 360 yards and a 103.7 passer rating on throws in the middle of the field from 0 to 10, 35 to 45. Pretty accurate guy. He knows what he wants to do with the football. Yeah. And also 18 of 22 for 310 and a 133.9 passer rating on throws from 10 to 20 yards in the middle of the field. So what the chart shows is he's manipulating the middle of the field from both a short, intermediate, and even a deep range for this year.
You do worry, though, if Darren Waller can't play, how's that going to impact it? Because you've got Ruggs, who's pretty much their shot play guy.
Right.
Brian Edwards, they really like, who's a physical guy, who's not quite consistent as they'd like. He has this weird situation where he dominates fourth quarter and doesn't do much before that. If Waller doesn't play, he's going to have to kind of show up and do more. Taking Darren Waller out of this offense, if that's what happens today with his ankle, that'll change it, and that would really help the Eagles.
Do you see a situation, we haven't seen a whole lot of blitzing from Jonathan Gannon. I don't think he's going to turn into Todd Bowles overnight here, but is Derek Carr, or without Darren Waller, is he someone you may want to try to force the issue with a little bit more?
Greg?
Anyone?
I wouldn't with the weapons that they have. They got 2 receivers that's averaging 20 yards, 20 yards average. That's just unheard of.
Ruggs and Edwards, I believe, right?
Ruggs and Edwards. And if you hit Ruggs in a quick screen and a blitz, you're not catching him. Or if you got a guy that's flat-footed because of a blitz. He ran by Casey Edwards and the safety so fast last week, it was unbelievable. We had to figure out a few things, and this is kind of going off topic a little bit, but we got to figure out what we're going to do when they get Darren Waller, Renfro, and Ruggs in the bunch, right?
Well,
we need to figure that out.
Bunch, yeah.
We talking about bunch, stacks, and short motions. That's what they do. They bring everything down and get people off. And I'm looking at it. I'm like, why don't the Eagles do this? You know, it's a condensed formation that keeps off coverage and makes it easier for the quarterback to read.
Sure.
Yeah. So we got to figure that out.
This year, Carr 54% completion percentage when blitzed, as opposed to 68% when not blitzed, but then again, totally different style of defense each week. So we have not seen the Eagles defense blitz a lot or even be successful all the time with it.
They might, if the Eagles blitz, it'll be very selective. They're not automatically all of a sudden going to change their whole approach.
Correct.
Sure.
Yeah. Greg, when you've watched Derek Carr over the years, and we talked earlier about the 2 games where he struggled, is there anything particular where you go, okay, this gives him trouble? Anything that
Well, it's funny we talk about blitz because I always thought that Carr, and it doesn't have to be from blitz, it can just be from pass rush.
Right.
I always thought that when there were bodies around Carr, his efficiency dropped pretty dramatically.
Right.
That he was not one of those guys. I don't know what's in his head, so I don't want to say he's not tough. That's not. I don't want to go there because you'd have to know what's in someone's head.
Sure.
But I think that his technique broke down. I think he hurries himself when there's people around him. I think he starts to play fast, and I think he throws the ball. That's where he loses a little bit of his accuracy, his ball placement. So yeah, the more bodies you can get around him, I think the less efficient that he is.
Right.
And that's where these matchups inside with Javon Hargrave, right, who's been incredible, and Fletcher Cox, who's healthy. They should be able to dominate John Simpson, Andre James, who's struggling at center. They move Alex Leatherwood now to right guard. This is an advantage that the Eagles have in the interior. They've got to win because, as Greg's talking about, those bodies that could get near him are those D tackles.
Absolutely. It's kind of almost as effective as a blitz if you can just get those guys in the quarterback's face. All right, big thanks to our intern, Zane Gonzalez, for pulling up some of those spray sheets and analytics numbers for us. Let us take a quick break to hear from our friends at Sky Motor Cars, including the voice of the Eagles, Mr. Merrill Reese.
Motor Cars in Westchester is a different sort of dealership. All it takes is one look at their Highline pre-owned vehicles that people all over the country want and need. Owner Brett Schulter, make sure you don't spend a dime of your money before you purchase the car. Sky Motor Cars allows you to make all the decisions regarding your next vehicle. At Sky Motor Cars, you never have to spend more than necessary. Visit SkyMotorCars.com today or call 610-918-7225.
All right, we're back talking about the Eagles versus the Raiders today, the matchups. You know, when I bring up Derek Carr, I bring up Max Crosby. You're talking about two guys who are not first or second round picks. Well, Carr was a second round pick.
Yeah, second round.
But the percentages for second round picks to do what Derek Carr has done is he's defied the odds. And then, of course, we've talked about Darren Waller, who, again, may not play today. We're going to wait to find out. We won't know until later. But here was a guy who was I think a mid-round pick of the Ravens.
Sixth
He was a
rounder.
wide receiver at
late round
Georgia
pick.
Tech.
Yeah.
And their option, what offense did Georgia Tech
I
run?
don't know what that is.
The triple option.
Right.
One guy's gonna get a receiver.
Right.
Yeah, you don't often see a tight end, although he was a wide receiver as well, for the Ravens not pan out, but he didn't for 2 years.
Right.
Then he goes to Oakland, now Las Vegas, and he's had 2 amazing years, and he's kind of on pace for another third good one. Adam, what do you remember about Darren Waller coming into the league as a 6th-round pick for the Ravens?
He's another guy who had to put weight on. He was a sort of introverted kid who wasn't sure what his place in the National Football League was, and then he had major off-the-field concerns. In fact, he was suspended for the entire 2017 season. I talked to someone who's very close to him, so that he basically understood that he had to take responsibility for the things that he was doing that was not right. He also had to be around the right people. He's actually a really good kid who he had a very odd background. Typically kids who get in trouble, sometimes are not, they don't come from a fluent background. He did.
Right.
He was sort of an outcast with the people he was with. He didn't know who he was, and he understood it. He got help, and he took responsibility. He's been a great example of it. You could turn your life around. Great kid. And I was talking to one of the Raiders coaches recently, said that when they got him late from the Ravens practice squad in 18. So they went to the OTAs in 2019. No one could cover him. So they're like, man, if you could just stay out of trouble and do the right thing. And he did. Ever since then, he's done everything well, and he's been a great example of it. You could turn your life around now. He's, as we all know, we watch the Raiders. He is so integral to what they do.
Right.
You take him out of the lineup today, if he can't play, that gives the Eagles a huge advantage.
If he plays, Jason, can you tell when you watch him that he is a converted wide receiver, the way he runs routes and catches the ball?
Yeah, because he has wiggle for a tight end, and he knows how to stem, right? So knowing when to stick, knowing when to do a rocker step, that's a 1-2. Things like that receivers do most of the time, and they're taught. He does those things naturally. And when you hear a guy like Patrick Surtain said that he's a unicorn, and he's seen some guys now, just in Alabama practice, right? So you've seen a lot of players, guys that are, in the Pro Bowl and or Super Bowl champs right now. So if Patrick Surtain says, "Oh, this guy's a unicorn," the guy is, and he's definitely one of those guys. He's one of those top 3-4 tight ends in the league. Right. He's right in that conversation behind, the Kittles and Kelce's. Yeah, he's right there. He's right there.
How would you compare him to the Kittles and the Kelce's, Greg?
He's not as physical as Kittle, but
Yeah. Kittle's a little different when he's
kicker.
healthy. Unfortunately, he's been getting a lot of injuries, and he's out now again.
Yeah.
But Kittle's a little different because he's so physical as a blocker. Kelsey is is just very, very smooth. Waller's smooth too. Both Waller and Kelsey can line up at the boundary X and beat corners. We've seen them do that.
Yeah.
And that's what really helps your offense. Because I had coaches tell me over the last couple of years that if you want a tight end in today's NFL that can line up at boundary X, the single receiver on the backside of trips, where you have 3 wide receivers to the other side, because not only can they win, but that helps dictate coverage before the snap of the ball, and it helps the quarterback get more information before the snap of the ball, which is what every coach wants for their quarterback.
No, totally agreed. He, the difference between him and Kelsey is more like Greg said, a smooth mover when it comes to route running and technique. But I think Waller can outrun him.
Yes.
Right.
Like Waller's like flat out just run straight down the field. Waller can blaze. He can run.
Waller to me is a little more straight line than Kelsey.
Yeah.
Kelsey's a little more loose hipped as a route runner.
That's one of my favorites.
What?
He's one of my favorites.
Kelsey?
To watch. Any position in the National
Kelsey?
Football League. Oh my gosh, he's one of my favorites.
Yeah, because Kelsey's a little more loose hipped.
Yeah.
You know.
And how about Goedert? Because we haven't seen him in a while.
Yeah.
When he's at his best, what does he look like?
I think Goedert, to me, you can answer this well. I think Goedert ultimately would be more like Waller. I don't think he's as loose hipped as Kelsey is.
No, he doesn't have the route tech that Kelsey. Yeah. See, so here's the thing, Kelsey is the tight end version of Devontae Adams. He's the tight end version of it. He's not as fantastic as Devontae Adams, but he can do the same thing. It's just a little bit slower. Right. But he's that. And I've never seen, like, me being in practice with him every day, and I'm like, dude, this guy's unbelievable.
How many years were you with Kelsey?
2.
2?
I was with him 2 years.
Did you know that early he'd be that special?
Oh, 100%, yeah. So as soon as I came in, and he stood by me for a little bit, and I saw him do a few moves. I was like, dude, this guy's unbelievable. And the stuff that he would do, I couldn't do it and get away with it. I just couldn't. And he just had it. He was playing against lesser guys now. But against those guys, it was unbelievable.
All right, hold your thoughts on Dallas Goedert, because we're going to talk about him extensively when we come back. First, we want to hear from our friends at Rivers Casino.
This is my city. This is a city that knows how to play. A city that's in it for the win. So I go to the place that gets that. Where they know how Philly likes to play. And where I know my seat is always ready. This is my place.
All right, thanks for our friends at Rivers Casino and Sportsbook. Again, come on down, place your bets. Watch the football games. That's why we do this early, so you can watch the 1 o'clock football games. You can come here, eat some great food, have some drinks. We already see a big crowd starting to pile up in the Sportsbook here at Rivers Casino and Sportsbook in Philadelphia. We were talking about Goedert. What an interesting dynamic. Their top weapon, Waller, may not play today. We'll have to see when the inactives come out. Meanwhile, Dallas Goedert, who theoretically should be the Eagles' top weapon or receiver in receptions, will come back after missing the Thursday night game. He was on the COVID list, so he was activated earlier this week. We keep saying this. This is a guy that we feel should be prominently featured in this offense, and not that they're not trying to. Again, that all comes down to a lot of things, but we know now that he's the #1 tight end. Zach Ertz has been traded. Ertz is with the Cardinals. And this is a big opportunity for Dallas Goedert, who is in a contract year. And in fact, he was asked about the kind of awkwardness a little bit of having both him and Zach Ertz on the team splitting reps. So here's what Dallas Goedert had to say this week about the change.
Yeah, I think it was mutual between him and I that, neither of us really wanted to be splitting time. We both thought that we should be #1 tight ends. We should be on the field on, first, second, and third down. It was what it was. We've been doing it for so long, and, I understood the situation that we had at hand with him and I there. But, splitting time wasn't something that either of us really wanted to do, and excited to have the role of being in there more. Yeah, I think I'm ready. I've always been waiting for this, like I said. It's an opportunity that I'm excited. I want to be able to play every play. I want to be a 3-down tight end. And, I think conditioning-wise, whatever it is, I think I can be out there the whole game.
All right, that was Eagles tight end Dallas Goedert, their new #1 unquestioned tight end. And you'll notice, Adam, as he was speaking, he said it was mutual, mutually thought of between him and Zach Ertz that neither of them wanted to be the number 2 tight end, which goes kind of back to the offseason of why they didn't make the move they made earlier, especially when you saw the compensation. That part is over. But I think that's important to confirm for people that both of those guys really didn't love the situation as it was going on.
Yeah, they weren't particularly close, as I understand it, where I think when Brent Celek was here and Ertz was drafted in 13, they became close. Goedert's a very competitive kid. He wanted to be their number 1 tight end. And remember, when he was drafted in 18, the belief was he would replace Ertz. No one knew how long Zach would play with him. And getting back to the offseason, they could have traded him for a 5th. I don't know if they would have gotten a 5th and a corner, which they got Gallen, who we haven't talked about, might dress today. We'll see.
Right.
But I think if the Eagles were being honest, they thought they were going to get way better compensation offered to them.
Right.
That's why they held out for it, and they wound up not getting it. Now, Ertz was on the final year of his deal. He was coming with ankle surgery. If you throw that out, you can't get it. Who would give up a 3rd for that? A guy coming off ankle surgery, 31 years old. I get it, leader. He still looks good, by the way. He's come off the surgery pretty well. Now he goes to a Cardinal team. We'll see if the Cardinals use him enough because they don't use the tight ends very much. But getting back to the Eagles, it's now Goedert's time. He's got 11 games to show that he deserves to get an extension.
Yeah.
They had significant talks, we were told, before the season. It was the Eagles' decision, not Goedert's, to halt them. We'll see what transpires over the next 6 to 8 weeks. And the Eagles do have a history. If a guy does well in season, they're not against extending in season.
Right. And there's also the franchise tag, by the way.
Sure, yes.
The Eagles once used a franchise tag on a tight end. His name was L.J. Smith. Didn't work out so great. Yeah, they once franchise tagged L.J. Smith way back in the day.
Wow.
That's even pre-Jason Avant years, man.
I was with LJ.
And he
was
was
an
an
LJ time.
He was an underachiever.
LJ taught me a really fantastic move versus 22 man.
Which was?
I love the guy. It was great.
It was just like you had to. If my route was at 12, I would stop at 8 and do this like dramatic stick, and it worked 100% of the time.
Okay.
It's just that you needed time to do it, but you had to shorten your pattern to do it.
Listen, man, those guys that play at Rutgers, they know how to run. No, I'm just kidding.
L.J. Smith. Wow.
You did hear Howie Roseman say after the trade that he knows that Dallas Goedert is not coming at a discount. So it kind of makes sense now. If you're going to pay this guy, he's got to be your number 1 playmaker. Craig, should he be the number 1 playmaker on this offense as it's currently constructed, in the pass offense? I love when you take that dramatic pause.
Well, it's a tough question because of what we just spoke about with Jalen Hurts. I mean, you know, Goedert, obviously tight ends work a lot in the middle of the field between the numbers. And right now, those are tougher throws for Jalen Hurts.
Right.
So should he be based on his talent, given that the wide receivers are 2 second-year players that are rookie? Yeah, he should be. But that may not happen. You know, we were just talking, Jason and I, that he needs targets. He needs the ball thrown to him.
Right.
And obviously that falls on Hurts.
Sure.
But you know, then you get to today's game where there's a lot of cover 3 beaters that don't necessarily have to be in the middle of the field, and I'd like to see some of those route concepts.
Well, Jay, let's talk about the cover 3, right? I mean, this is a defense that Jim Schwartz played a lot last year, so the Eagles' offense has seen it. The one high, man on the outside at times.
Yeah.
Gus Bradley is the defensive coordinator. It's commonly said you want to beat a cover 3, 4 verticals, right? And one of them
that's one way.
Is your
that's
one way.
That's not the only way. That's one way.
Certainly not the only way.
Yeah.
You can do a couple verticals and guys in the flat. I mean, there's totally a bunch of ways. But we saw last year Doug really liked to do 4 verticals a lot against cover 3. But is this the game where you have Goedert and maybe a Quez Watkins matched up there in the slot? Or whatever. I mean, whatever combination, and try to work the seams.
Well, you can try to work the seams, but there's like Rick said, there's so many different ways. Cover 3 is one of the easiest defense to pass against.
Yep. Right.
Cover 3 is a run-stopping defense. Most of the time, you see cover 3 with most teams on the first down to try to get someone into a 2nd and 8 to get them on a pull side of a long 3rd down.
Right.
So the seam throws are there in cover 3, but the tight end deep over where the guy to the overside is going vertical down the field or running a post where he's staying skinny so he can keep the corner and the safety, and now you got the guy dragging over there that catches the ball on top of the flat defender.
I know exactly what you're talking about.
There's a million, there's 2 floods.
The floods, exactly.
There's a bunch of different things you do versus cover 3. Slant patterns where there's a drag in the slant where you take the flat defender out and there's a slant behind it. There's so many different things. Everything is on the board versus cover 3.
Sure.
It's all about if if Jalen Hurts can see it or not.
Right.
But this is the game for him
And
to
they
do
knew,
well against.
and they knew because they had hired Gus Bradley, they drafted to play cover 3 because they drafted Trayvon Merrick in the second round. It was second round, correct?
Yes.
Because they have clearly defined roles. You can watch. I think I watched every game of theirs on defense. I don't think Merrick has been in the box one time, and I don't think Jonathan Abrams been on the back end one time. I mean, they are playing
Old
cover
school.
3.
Yeah.
Abram,
Yeah.
and that's a great point about the run stopping. Abram is almost like a hybrid linebacker safety type player.
Right.
He plays in the box, and Merrick, who's actually pretty good on the back end, he's a big, long athlete who can run.
Right.
So everything is built for cover 3.
But again, Adam, real quick before you, just that stat one more time. Tight ends account for 75%.
9.3 targets per game. They're number 2 in the National Football League. They're giving up a ton of production. The Raiders are to tight ends.
Right.
Now, another thing which we should mention, some lineup changes. So, Meek Robertson was a 4th rounder last year. He's now starting. They always thought he was a 4th corner, maybe a slot corner. Nate Hobbs.
He's been kind of semi-benched, I think.
Okay, because Nate Hobbs is the guy, the 5th rounder of Illinois. They love him.
Yeah, but he plays the
He's
slot.
their nickel, right?
Yeah.
He's
Who are
their slot.
their outside guys now?
Right now,
Casey
Hayward plays
and,
to the field.
he's great.
Hobbs.
He's had a great year. Had a great year.
Nick Hobbs, right?
Well, Hobbs is their slot corner, right?
Slot. And who's the other corner?
Isn't it?
Because Arnett is out, is he not?
So is
He's
Trayvon
on IR,
Mullen.
yeah.
And
Trayvon
Mullen's
Mullen
out.
is their boundary corner, but he's out.
He's out.
Right.
He's on IR.
Isn't it Faison?
Brandon Faison,
Brandon
they just
Faison.
signed to play for Gus Bradley, yes.
Faison
played last week.
Yeah, Faison is going to be the boundary corner, and because they didn't want to move Hayward
Casey-
from the field to the boundary, they
Right.
wanted to keep him as the field corner.
Right.
Because
It's
they
a-
do boundary field. Not every team does
They
that. They
generally
do.
play
That's a
3
college
corners,
thing.
right?
yeah.
Right. Hayward's the best corner, who's had a very good year statistically in terms of being targeted and so forth. Faison, they just got off the street, who played for Gus Bradley with the Chargers. So
Yeah, he's a Virginia Tech kid. He's got length. You know, a lot of people thought he'd come in the league and be pretty good because he's about 6'2".
Right.
You know, but he's
and
been
Nate
with
Hobbs
team.
is so good as a nickel corner. He's been one of the big, great stories for them on defense.
Yeah.
They're not a pushover in the secondary.
No.
They're down 2 corners.
See, they have a lot of guys who were with Gus Bradley before.
They know the defense, right?
They, they know their defense, but I just think that Casey is playing good on tape. Casey can get run by anytime.
Okay.
At any point, anytime. He doesn't run well. He's never run well. He didn't run well in Green Bay. He didn't run well in He doesn't run well.
Right.
So, and when you have that speed on the outside that we have, we can take advantage of it. Sutton had a few straight down the middle. They missed the throws, but Sutton, you know, he's a more physical player, but you can run by him.
Is this the 3rd time this year that it's going to be that the Eagles are playing a team that literally just signed a corner off the street a week or 2 ago? I mean, they did that with Josh Norman in the 49ers. Wasn't it Richard Sherman, with Tampa Bay?
Yep.
And now it's going to be Faison for
amazing.
it's unbelievable.
Because they tried to Meek Robinson outside a few weeks ago. Adam, that's the reason they signed Faison because Robertson couldn't do it.
He's also very small. In
Yeah.
fact, if you remember,
He's more of a slot guy.
Brian Griese's like, why is Mike Williams not getting the ball? Mike Williams is 6 inches taller than Meek Robertson.
Right.
So I'll be interested to see how the Eagles play
But
this.
Hobbs has played well.
He's been a great story. Nate Hobbs from University of Illinois.
Well, to your guys' point, the Raiders have been very good this year at limiting big plays. They're only allowing 5.03 yards per pass play. That's 2nd in the NFL. And they are 8th in the NFL on 3rd down, so playing good situational football. I'm almost
Quite a change from
wait,
last
these
year.
are the Raiders?
I know, quite a change from last year.
I'm hesitant to go look and see where the penalties are. If those are low too, then I officially don't know who these
And
Raiders
not
are.
that the Eagles use Greg Ward as a slot receiver. They're the #1 team covering slot receivers. They don't give any production up to the slot.
Right.
It's tight end, and that's where Goedert should be a factor.
All right.
Should be a factor.
Well, a vertical slot like Quiz
Yeah, he could do
is
something,
the
yeah.
outlier
Yes.
when it
Right.
comes to all of this.
Sure,
right?
sure,
Because
sure.
you're not going to see another slot this year, or maybe 1 or 2 a year out of 17 games that can run like Quiz Watkins.
Right.
Because slots are just either quicker or bigger. They're never as fast
never
as he
burners,
is.
right.
Jason, does he command the ball more? Should Quez Watkins get the ball more?
Yeah, based on
How
what
so?
we've seen, he should. He's been the guy that's made big plays down the field. He hadn't put many balls on the ground. He's been open, and he's made the best of his opportunities. And you have to, especially when you're targeting Devontae Smith so often, and you're even giving Jalen Reagor targets, and he's not coming down with them. At some point, you got to give the guy that's coming down with those the opportunity.
Yeah, and look, he's been on the field more, so it's not like the coaches aren't trying.
Aren't seeing it.
That comes back again to, does the quarterback see the open and get the ball to the people in the right times? Let's flip the script a little bit, talk about the Eagles' defense, because we've seen some changes from Jonathan Gannon's defense over the last few weeks. Obviously, getting Rodney McLeod back for a little bit helped them. I know you and Q have talked about it on Q&A, some of the small things going on. But the one thing that really still jumps out, Jason, is that their linebacker play, especially against the run, not really getting it done. I believe that they are 4th in the NFL in average yards per play right now at 5.04, which is good. As a defense, they're only allowing 5.04 yards, and they've only allowed 2 pass plays of 20 or more yards. This is the same defense last year that was among the leaders in giving up pass plays of 20 or more yards. So now they're on the opposite end of the spectrum, so you can sort of see the philosophy Jonathan Gannon is putting into this defense starting to work, but we also know that I think they have the 5th worst run defense in the league. So, and it comes down to these linebackers.
Is it really working, though?
Because well, I mean, from a statistical standpoint, they're not allowing big plays.
Well, I hear you, but people are still scoring 40. People are
still
still going for 400 yards of offense.
But isn't that because of the run?
It's not just running. It's just that you can pick your poison. Maybe I can't get the ball a million miles down the field. I can't get the 70-yard bomb.
Right.
But I can get a 20-yard pass play as much as I can, and I just do that 3 times. I'm in the red zone.
Sure.
Right? So
which is what the Bucs did.
Right.
Exactly.
But and that's the question. Is it because they've played the Bucs, the Chiefs, and the Cowboys, and 3 MVP quarterbacks and 2 Super Bowl champions? Will that same philosophy work a lot better over these next 5 games? Or, as we talk about the linebackers, do they really need to start doing something differently there?
So all right, and I'll answer your linebacker question. It's not many Sam Darnold you're going to be facing, right? When you got guys that can play. And you got, Derek Carr that can play, that can push the ball down the field, can be in that intermediate area over the middle. So you're going to have to come up with different ways. Now, so we know that we don't have linebackers that are built to stop the run or plug holes. We just don't. We have smaller guys that like to run sideline to sideline.
Right.
We don't have the guys that we want yet. And I think that's going to change this offseason. But right now, we're stuck with what we have. We got Davion Taylor, we got Alex Singleton, we got Eric Wilson, we got TJ Edwards.
Yeah.
All of these guys can be good at situationally, but none of them are every down linebackers that you need in order to come up to stop a Leonard Fournette.
Exactly.
We just don't have that.
And then Adam mentioned in the opening, maybe we'll see some changes. We've already seen Eric Wilson's role reduced. We're now seeing Davion Taylor, who's more of a coverage linebacker, getting in on the field.
They played him a lot last week in the base.
Yeah.
And here's the question.
In the 5-2 base.
With Josh Jacobs is another power back, and the Eagles linebackers are typically farther back, somewhere around 7 yards at the snap. And you saw what Fournette did last week. It wasn't that he was great. It was like he got such a head start.
Right.
And he got a full head of steam. By the time the linebackers crashed, and you saw what he did to Singleton. He dragged them.
Yeah.
Because they're so far back. So sometimes it's how you deploy your players. So I'm interested to see what Jonathan Gannon does here with these linebackers today, because Greg was talking about it. Without John Gruden, do they change up? We only have 1 game. And it's interesting, Greg Olsen, talking to people who work with him, he's more of a pass-happy guy.
Yeah.
Not last week, because they got a lead.
Right.
But I'll be interested to see if he comes out throwing today.
Greg, what do you think about the linebacker play, specifically Singleton in this defense?
I mean, if I'm being honest, based on tape study, I think that's a weakness of their defense.
Yeah.
I don't think they're very good at the linebacker position. I think they know that.
Right.
This is, as Jason just said, this is what they're playing with this year. I mean, look, I've talked to a lot of people, because I see the tape, and then I want to confirm it with people who can focus just more only on the Eagles than I can, because I have to watch a lot of things. And the key thing I constantly hear is they don't have a true starting linebacker, which you basically said. They don't have that guy. So what's Jonathan Gannon doing? He's mixing and matching. So that's why last week you see Davion Taylor, who was drafted primarily to be a nickel-type player, a sub-player, play a lot of snaps in the base.
Yeah.
And their base is a 5-2. So
how do you think he did?
He had a couple of plays where I thought he stepped up, but, he's not a big kid.
Right.
I mean, Taylor's almost looks like a safety out there.
And remember, he was drafted to be a coverage linebacker.
Yeah.
He wasn't drafted to play the run. They have these 7 linebackers, but I don't think they've got the right combination. That's why we keep hearing that they're probably going to do something different today. Don't know exactly what it is, but I do know this. They're just trying to figure this out. These coaches are they're new to these guys.
When you talk to people, and the tape tells you this, when you talk to people, they tell you that right now at safety and linebacker, the Eagles are not very good.
Yeah.
And,
2 positions they also haven't drafted well at
Right,
for
but
quite
I
a
mean,
while.
that's-
They really haven't
Well,
drafted.
they haven't-
or
they
even
haven't
tried
had
to
them.
be honest
Yeah,
with you.
drafted,
Yeah,
yeah.
absolutely. Jason, with I lost my train of thought. If you were being, I know you were an offensive coach last year, assistant wide receivers coach on the team, but you're out at every practice, so you saw the defense. You know the personnel for the most part. If you were going to try to be a little bit more stout today against the run, are you maybe playing T.J. Edwards a little more, Sean Bradley a little? I know in Week 1 against Atlanta, they played Bradley a little bit.
Well, T.J. Edwards is a head buster.
Right.
That's what he does.
He's a head buster.
Yeah. He's
I like that term.
he comes
run
down.
player.
He's a run player. That's what he's designed and built for.
Right.
Problem is that he doesn't do well in pass coverage. And this is what you have when you don't have a guy. You got a bunch of guys that do things, this one thing well. This guy does this well, and I have to figure out a way to make that work.
Right.
And it makes you vulnerable as a defense because the other team knows that as well. Oh, T.J. Edwards is in the game. Let's pass it on him. or Alex Singleton's in the game. Let's run it right at him.
Sure.
Those things happen. So we'll see. I'm interested to see what they decide to do at linebacker position today. Maybe he plays a little bit more to try to stop the run, but. Jacobs is only rushing for 3.2 yards a carry. They're not.
They haven't run the ball great.
They haven't run it a lot.
Right.
So hopefully, we can get into some.
And
some
what was
situations.
interesting last week is when I was watching the game on TV, the Broncos Raiders game. Obviously the announcers do their Zoom calls, with
Yes.
the coaches.
Yeah.
And one of the things that was said, and I can't remember who was doing the game, but they said that Olsen likes Kenyon Drake more than Josh Jacobs. So it's going to be very interesting to see.
Interesting.
If Kenyon Drake.
Kenyon Drake made a few really good plays. He caught
And Kenyon Drake
the wheel.
is a very good receiver. See,
explosive,
that
too.
wheel, it's funny, you talked
wheel.
about plays versus scheme. That
Cover three.
wheel was a combination of both because
Right.
they knew they were going to get cover 4, and they designed a cover 4 beater, and
Yeah.
Drake ran the wheel route against the linebacker
remember-
Johnson. But it still had to be a really good throw.
Right.
See, that's the thing.
was a good throw,
So the
yeah.
play design is great, but you still have to execute the play.
Yeah, if you send two verticals,
Yeah.
get the corner and the safety out, now the flat defender or the hook curl defender
He's gotta run with it.
has to go vertical.
Yeah, he's gotta run
And
with
if
it.
you're putting Sam linebackers out there, you can't run with him.
And remember, Gruden drafted Jacobs. That was his guy because he
Yeah.
wants to grind the football. And Greg Olsen, as I said earlier, he's known as a pass game guy. So maybe Kenyon Drake will be a factor today in the
And
pass
actually,
game.
Drake was a factor early in his career when he was in Miami as a receiver.
Yeah.
When Adam Gase was there, he used him a lot as a receiver
falls
on
out of-
vertical routes.
He's
You remember
explosive.
you remember the one that last play of the game where he made a couple guys
Yeah,
miss
yeah.
and scores a game-winning touchdown.
So
there
I mean,
for
it's very
Miami.
possible you could see. Look, we're not saying anything out of school here. The tape tells you.
Right, yeah.
That's what I do.
Right.
They're going to go after the Eagles linebackers in the pass coverage.
Sure.
They're going to do that.
Well, you wonder maybe a little thunder and like Jacobs between the tackles, a little Drake in the passing game and outside the tackles.
And if Waller doesn't play,
Yeah.
you might see more of
More
Drake
Drake.
because he's a very good receiver who can run intermediate and vertical routes.
Hate the Drake.
Here's the thing. Whoever plays tight end for the Raiders is going to have a big game. Now, they won't have a big game like Waller would because Waller can do a little bit more after the catch and hurt you deep. But
Right.
but that guy that's playing tight end, this is a game that you want to put him on
Buster
your
Moreau
fantasy
is not a
team.
terrible player,
Right?
by the
This is
way.
the guy you
Yeah.
want. He may catch 60 yards.
He
or
might
whatever it
catch
is.
7 balls for
Well,
71
he scored
yards.
a bunch of
Yeah.
touchdowns
Yeah.
a couple years
Yeah.
ago. Yeah,
Right.
he's a good player. 87.
Interesting. Here's something interesting that was said also throughout the week that kind of had my, what does the Grinch say? The puzzling going on there when you're not quite sure what's going on. But Jonathan Gannon was asked about Ryan Kerrigan this week. And we know Ryan Kerrigan is a decorated pass rusher. We know he's the all-time leader in sacks for the Washington football team. And we know that he came here on a one-year deal to kind of be a situational pass rusher. And as of right now, through 6 games, he has 0 sacks and he has 1 singular tackle on the stat sheet.
Yeah.
And yet, despite that, Jonathan Gannon said that Ryan Kerrigan is playing winning football and went on to say that because of things Ryan Kerrigan is doing, other people are doing well because of Ryan Kerrigan. Now, look, I am not here for Kerrigan slander. I feel like he's playing out of position. It's not necessarily all his fault. But you can't feed the people Ryan Kerrigan's playing winning football right now when he's not doing the thing that most times he does.
Well, I'll tell you that first touchdown last week.
And they're not winning, by the way.
Oh, not winning.
Yeah.
The first touchdown, against the Bucks last week was maybe one of the most unathletic plays you've ever seen.
Go, Gadget Orange!
Listen, he saw the play the entire time, and his body just could not get there. Right. He saw it the entire time. He butt, and he saw it. He's looking right at Brady, and Brady didn't see him. Very rarely you get Brady did not see him. He wouldn't have threw the ball if he had seen him. But if there was anybody else, anybody a year younger, would have been an interception or at least a batted ball, So
Sure.
You can't tell me about Kerrigan. After that play, I wanted to just throw him back to Washington.
Tommy wasn't real good on that one.
So not winning football for Ryan. I mean, you're talking about a coverage player, right?
Well,
Again, he's not being asked to do what he's normally been asked to do.
I can't speak to that because I'm not just watching him and charting him on every snap.
Right.
But you'd have to watch every snap to know that one way or the other. One thing I've learned over the years, and I'm not knocking you, you're just reading a stat sheet, is when you read a stat sheet about a defensive lineman, that sometimes that doesn't tell you anything about how they're playing.
I get that totally. But you know what to expect of a Ryan Kerrigan. And we talked about it going in the year. You expect stand-up rusher like he did. I mean, right now he's got a hand in the dirt. You wonder if he's really
because of Brandon Graham's injury.
Right.
Yeah. The other thing too that's interesting is when they go into their base defense, which is basically that 5-2 front, is they bring Josh Sweat all the way inside, and he essentially plays a 4 or 4-eye technique, and. A lot of people would say that's not where he belongs because that's not what he is. So you're going to have that debate too, because that's what that 5-2 front does.
We talked about that with Sweat, where playing him in that 4-eye, he's playing inside. You're taking away his ability to rush the passer.
Right.
He plays to the strong side.
Yeah.
That's going to be a philosophical discussion. With the coaching staff and the personnel staff. They just signed him to an extension, $13 million a year, Jeff.
Yeah.
And they're going to have to make that decision. How are you going to use this guy next year?
Jay, how is that discussion going to go? Hey, Howie, we need like 3-4 type players, not 4-3 players.
We'll see. They have a lot of soul searching to do with this because usually when you're playing this 4 inside, this 4-eye or these types of defense, you should be better against the run, and you should be a better. So you're not getting either.
Right.
Which is the question, right? So now my linebackers are not making plays, and our defense is built to kind of stop the run a little bit, at a disadvantage because it's cover 2 or cover 4 behind it all the time. But we're not doing either one of them. So I would rather be in a defense where Josh Sweat can unleash his talent, his ability. That's what you want.
That's a great point. Because if you're going to play a 5-2, which is essentially what they're playing, people can call it a 3-4. It's a 5-2. There's 5 defenders on the line of scrimmage. It's normally Avery.
Right.
Okay. That's a run-stopping defense because the idea behind that is your 2 stack backers are clean.
Right.
Yeah.
And the stack backers, again, the tape tells you this, are not quite good enough right now.
Yeah, they've been clean all right. Yeah. Let me tell you what I think about Ryan Kerrigan and some other players on this team that might not fit. First, I'm going to tell you to check out our friends at PHLSportsNation.com, enhancing the fans' experience with their coverage of all Philadelphia sports teams for the fan, by the fan. That's their motto. So make sure you check out all their great coverage on PHLSportsNation.com and, of course, on Twitter at PHLSportsNation. So the trade deadline's coming. It's November 2nd. The Eagles have a game today. They'll have one more game before the trade deadline, and they certainly have some players who I think, and we talk about Kerrigan, if a team is doing well and has a need for a pass rushing stand-up guy or a specialist,
well, you just
which
told me
every
he's not
team
rushing the
does.
quarterback, though.
Well, if I'm saying a team that puts him in the speed, right?
Yes.
In the right scheme for him.
Stand-up pass rush.
I mean, what is he doing here but kind of wasting one of the last few years of his career? He's got to be a guy you would consider putting on the block.
He's on a 1-year, Kerrigan's on a 1-year, just above minimum salary. He'd be a good guy to bring in if you need 20 to 25 snaps as a situational pass rusher to stand up in a 34. Yes, I could certainly see that. We've talked about Andre Dillard. I do not see the Eagles trading him unless they get at least a third. Why do I say that? Left tackle is left tackle is a tough position to find. Okay, we've talked about 3 or 4 teams needing a left tackle, and when we get closer to November 2nd, I think they would entertain a third-round pick, but nothing below that.
Right.
You might as well just wait till March, when we get to the third week of March, when we get the opening free agency. Because if you're not getting something really, really good, this guy, Greg, you both have seen him. How good's Dillard's tape been?
I think it's been solid. I still think that he struggles at times, and he may always with the bull rush and speed to power.
Right.
Yeah, guys who get inside of him. But the one thing you see is he's got really good movement, and that's what people knew when he came out of college. His feet are really light, He can run. He can pass protect. So I mean, I think he could start in the NFL, and depending on what kind of offense you run, could be a solid starter.
Sure.
No, but if you're a run-based team, Jason, that's where I think you might say, I don't know.
Yeah, you don't know about that.
Yeah,
And I
if
think
you're the
they don't run the ball
Ravens,
here.
you're not trading. If you're the Ravens, you're not trading for Andre Dillard. I
yeah,
would
but
think,
your left tackle, you have a left tackle to pass protect. To
Right.
me, you run the ball somewhere else. Left tackle, pass
By
protect.
the way,
You wanna-
they could be one of those teams that are interested.
Well, I know,
because
but I
Ronnie
brought that
Stanley's
up
out
because
for
they
the
lost
year.
Ronnie Stanley.
Yeah.
But they're a run-blocking line. I mean, I can't imagine.
Yeah,
they
but
would,
in many ways they're a schemed run game, which is
Yeah.
different than lining
Well,
up
that's
and
true.
expecting
That's
you
true.
to just.
and you
hit
have
some-
Lamar Jackson
Right,
too. You can
right.
manipulate anything.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Exactly. So they're different.
When it comes to the Eagles being active at the trade deadline, you have most of the teams that are active at the trade deadline are teams that are competing for something.
Exactly.
Right.
That's what we have to figure. We have to figure that out.
well,
now.
you have to
Where
wonder
are
if
we?
today's outcome, right?
Yeah,
will
you-
if they lose
Because
today,
we're more than one piece or two pieces
sure.
away.
You got a lot of guys on.
That's like
You got a lot of guys on one-year deal. Like Steven Nelson's on a one-year deal. Maybe a team might need a cornerback.
Look,
we know about Fletcher Cox. I
Look,
mean,
we spoke about this. I guess I wasn't on last week, but 2 weeks ago. They were 4-11-1 last year. They brought in a new coaching staff. I'm not saying that they're writing off this season and saying, okay, it's okay if we're 5-12. No team says that.
Right.
But I think there's a sense that they've got some things that need to be worked on, and you can't fix them all in one season.
right. Well,
I mean, that's the way it works.
Yeah.
I will advise this: keep your eye on the inactives today, because if there's somebody inactive today who has been active for the first 5-6 games of the year, then you might be on to something about the team making sure this guy doesn't get hurt.
Right.
Don't want to jeopardize anything. And it could be a big name. It could be someone you don't expect, but just that'll be your first indication that something might be up.
And the Zach Ertz thing was very odd. Like, they gave Zach the opportunity to play or not play.
Wasn't that crazy? Imagine if he had gotten
know.
hurt in that game.
Exactly. And Steve Keim was talking about the general manager of the Cardinals. He knew going in that he was going to play, and he was thankful that he didn't get hurt.
yeah.
That was definitely a gamble.
And it's
but-
not like they didn't feature him. I mean, he caught the first the touchdown. I mean, he
They didn't
played
hide
the
him.
game.
No,
Yeah.
that was interesting.
Can you imagine if he had gotten hurt in that game? I thank God he didn't
Yes.
for a variety of reasons. But what kind of decision making would have come up under question
That
if
would have
something had
look,
happened
and
there?
then right, if it was a serious injury, obviously.
Yeah.
You could trade him if it was a sprained ankle.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
Now Zach will make his debut in Phoenix with the Houston Texans.
Yeah.
Right, who've got the D-Hop.
Then they
the
play
lot.
Thursday night against Green Bay.
That'll be the game of the season, yeah.
People like to get. I saw T.Y. Hilton get all excited about being activated to play against the Texans last week because he apparently has a good track record against them.
Yeah,
But obviously, I'm thinking any pass catcher right now is licking their chops to get at that defense. All right, let's do what we do best. It's prediction time. It's
boy.
player of the game time.
This is a tough one with the Waller situation, though, man. I got to be honest with you.
You think so?
I was good.
It is.
All week, Raiders. Now, if he's not playing, can I give? Oh, wait, I'll give what
Go
we
ahead. Go ahead.
I'll start. We originally gave our picks. I have it, the Raiders 24-20 over the Eagles.
Well, we usually start with our player of the game. I wanted to bring up the fact that you originally had Darren Waller.
Yeah,
right?
well, that's what I was going to
And
get.
and then you kind of had to
Well,
think
I
about
have
that
to hedge
a
it
little bit.
because, okay, so I've got a 24-20 Raiders. Now, if Waller doesn't play, I'm picking the Eagles. Because he's a game changer. He just changed. The way that you defend changes.
Mm-hmm.
And the Eagles are also not very good against the tight end. They're better than the Raiders are. But I absolutely will pick the Eagles. If Waller's out and he got hurt in Friday's practice, no walkthrough for him, not good.
All right.
Not good. Game changers. So there you go.
Hold that thought. We're going to get to everybody's player
All
of the game picks. First, I want to remind everyone, if you want to get an advantage over your sportsbook, download BetQL, the only app you'll need to make smart bets. Their best bet computer model scans over 350,000 unique bets a year to give you the best bet recommendation for every game across all sports and gives you the reason behind why you should place the bet. Their model covers everything from spreads, over-unders, player prop bets, and if you don't want to use the model, if you like to do the research by yourself, BetQL's got all the necessary tools for your research needs, from sharp data, line movement, team summaries, lineup and injury breaking news, and even a leaderboard to track your success. So head to the App Store or the Google Play Store now to download BetQL. You can even go to try.betql.co/ITB to get started now. Just enter the discount code ITB at payment checkout for 25% off their subscription offerings. And you can check out their sportsbook offers page if you live in one of the eligible states to claim free offers upon signing up at one of the many sportsbooks listed. So don't miss out on the chance to beat your sportsbook this fall season using BetQL, and I dug up the stats on BetQL. And right now they project the Raiders to win 26-23. They are 63% in their win projection percentage. They're confident that the Raiders will win the game. They have a very low-scoring first half, 13-11, that they see the Raiders winning. And they give that about a 62% shot. They like Derek Carr to have 2 passing touchdowns, 270 passing yards, and no interceptions today. And oddly enough, they think Miles Sanders, their projection says Miles Sanders will have 60 yards on 15 carries today, along with 20 yards on 2 catches. That would be like his entire season production in one game if he were to do that today. I kid. But let's get to standout players. Adam, you feel like Darren Waller, if he plays, will be the guy for the Raiders?
Yeah, he's my player of the game. I think he's just a game changer. Now, if he doesn't play, I guess I need to come up with somebody else.
That's okay. Well, we could stick with it. We'll see what happens. Greg, who do you think will be the player of the game today?
Well, you know what? I'm going to be optimistic this week because of who they're playing against and the fact that there's a lot of opportunities against cover 3. There's not a lot of mystery here. And I think after a week off I'm sure the coaches had a lot of come-to-Jesus conversations, maybe some adjustments here and there. I'm going to say Jalen Hurts is going to play well today, and I'm going to pick him as my player of the game.
Nice.
All right, well, you guys have talked about the cover 3, kind of setting up for a good day. By the way, Greg just mentioned the kind of the come-to-Jesus moment during the long delay off. And
Another way to say self-scouting.
Of course. And I wanted to get to that because I found it interesting in some of the press conferences. The coordinators, coaches were asked, did everybody stick around a little longer? Were there extra practices? And there was not. There was not seemingly a focus on having the guys there and really, out of any more than they would ordinarily be. It's like they got a little bit of a bye. Was that smart for this team at this moment?
Sometimes you can, information overload. Sometimes you can, and you as a head coach have to be able to understand your team and your coaching staff.
Right.
Maybe they've been there trying to figure it out a bunch this season late, and they say, let's get a break because we're going to be back here in 3 days anyway. So let's give you that 3 days off. So hopefully that was what he felt.
Okay. I mean, this team, it's not just the losses. The penalties have really hurt them and some of the discipline errors. So I was wondering if they were going to be a little bit more stringent, like, have some guys in and working.
Yeah, I don't know how much you can, as far as the coaching staff, you can besides telling the guys to stop doing stupid stuff, as you can do with the film on penalties.
Stop that. Stop it. What's your, real quick, the taunting penalties? A little overboard, or do you think it's necessary? Or?
Derek Barnett's few late hit stuff, I think that's just, the player. The taunting penalty, I think that's an egregious call. In that situation, and it's only in football where we do that.
Yeah.
Where
and only
the game
defensive
is
players,
only
by the way.
when a game is on the line, does the referee want to put themselves in the middle of the play?
Yep.
In basketball, if this last couple of seconds of the game, last quarter, they're not trying to call a foul at all.
Right.
But only in our game do we want to decide the outcome of the game. Should he have done it? No. But should have been called? Absolutely not.
I noticed the offensive players don't seem to be getting the same amount of taunting, and they get up after those catches.
Yeah, they get up and they flex and they throw the ball down. But listen,
kind of funny that way, right?
Yeah, it's that way. The people pay to see the offense; they don't pay to see the.
Yeah, I was figuring that the pro offensive player response was coming.
Hey, they pay to see us, so we get a little bit of preferential treatment.
Yes.
You can't. Like, if you want to celebrate a play, turn away from the player. You can't get in the guy's face and try to intimidate him.
Yeah.
Right.
You just back years ago, you could have gotten away with it. They probably wouldn't have called it. Now that they warned, every team was warned they're going to call it this year.
Yeah, that's like there are certain things that happen because the competition committee and they come up with the things that they view. The points of emphasis, and they go a little bit gun-ho the first. I bet you in week 12, week 15, they will not call any of this.
Yeah.
All right. Who's your player of the game today?
My player of the game is going to be Devontae Smith, based on what we talked about earlier. Yes, zone defense. Where does Jalen Hurts like to throw the ball? To the right, short, intermediate, to the right. Devontae Smith on that side making hay against some guys that I don't believe that are the best. I don't think Casey Hayward is one of the better corners in this league, even though his stats say otherwise. I just don't. Okay. And, facing, got him off the street, I think Devontae Smith plays well.
All right, my player of the game is going to be Dallas Goedert. I think he's going to come back with a vengeance.
Good one.
I mean, look, I know he's been chomping at the bit to be the #1 tight end on this team, and of course he can't throw the ball to himself. but I tend to think that he and Jalen Hurts are going to have a good connection and that Nick Sirianni is going to try his hardest to scheme the ball into Dallas Goedert's hands today against that cover 3 defense. So he's my player of the game. Let's go to our picks, of course, courtesy of Bet Rivers Casino. And if you go to the app right now, yet again, a very familiar trend on the betrivers.com website here. The Eagles are, the line has moved again. They are now only 1.5 point underdogs.
The Darren Waller news?
Yeah, maybe it has something to do with the Darren Waller news. It started off at 3, then it was 2.5, so now it's 1.5. Line keep going toward the Eagles, but yet for the 7th straight week, the Eagles will be the underdogs again. I cannot remember the last time the first 7 games the Eagles were underdogs. Jason, I'll start with you. Who wins today?
I think the Birds are going to pull this one out. 23-22. We travel well to Vegas. Everyone and their parents is down there in Las Vegas. I think they'll be a little bit of home field advantage.
Right? All right, Greg, who's going to win today?
I will pick the Eagles to win today.
Oh, all right.
I can't remember my score. Was it 27-24?
It was.
Correct. There you go.
No senior moment for you. Good
no,
job.
No, I've had a few of those, but no, I guess not right then. Yeah.
That's 2 good guys, Jason and Greg, picking the Eagles. Adam, who you got today?
Well, again, with
you got a malleable score, right?
I do. Waller, with Waller, 24-20 Raiders. Without Waller, I'll reverse the score, Eagles 24-20.
All right, well, we're going to hold you to the with Waller because right now, as we know, he's playing.
Right.
For stat-keeping purposes, we're going with Waller.
Okay.
And I also see an Eagles victory today. I have them winning a low-scoring game, 21-17. Again, I think a big game for Dallas Goedert. And again, come down here. Fall into Fun Fridays in September here at Rivers Casino because on Fridays they got $40,000 autumn tables in the Baccarat tournament, and also their Rush for Riches Saturdays in September's. Each Saturday, be one of 48 winners with a shot at taking home $5,000 cash each week. And Sundays are always made for football at Rivers Casino Philadelphia. Every Sunday from now until the end of the season, unless that just happened now, you can enjoy $7 food specials in Jack's Bar and Grill, half-price gourmet burgers at Hugo's Chop House, drink specials and more. And not only that, but when the Birds score, which sometimes they do, you can score when you are actively planning with your Rush Rewards card in their Bird's Nest pit in front of the sportsbook. Remember, you could be a winner at Rivers Casino in Philadelphia, where Philly loves a winner. Gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER. That's going to do it for the show. We want to thank our friends at Rivers Casino and Sportsbook, Sky Motor Cars, BetQL, the teams at Rubble Hill and Public Square. For Jason Avant, Greg Cosell, Adam Kaplan, I'm Jeff Mosher. Thanks for watching. Enjoy the 1 o'clock games and enjoy today's 4 o'clock game. See you next week.